It's been a long time. I haven't had the feeling. So,
Hello and welcome to the Shippensburg Area School District Committee of the Whole. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. August.
Thank you, Mrs. Eberly. First up, we have three scheduled presentations. The first one would be from EI regarding elementary facilities options. So I'm going to turn it over to Adam Kerr. Board members should have the blown up version of the options. Take it away.
Yeah, appreciate it. So, Adam Kerr with EI Associates. So, it's good to be back. So what we did is we put together a spreadsheet that has a number of options, as you can see, and I'll walk through it in a little bit. But I think what we wanted to discuss was, obviously, if you step back about a year and a half, our office put together some enrollment projections looking over 10 years, and we had noted that our analysis was that the district is looking at some potential increase in enrollment, particularly at the kindergarten and elementary school age facilities. And the district also had Power School put together a demographic study not too long ago, which was provided to us as well. So and obviously those Power School demographics showed even a further increase in the potential for enrollment within the district. So understanding that, obviously we're trying to look at a number of projects together. Obviously we're going to be talking about, I think later this evening, the bids and so forth on the high school and middle school. I think we wanted to provide a somewhat of a picture of some options that we could consider should the district also be looking to possibly look at additions at Grayson, Byrd, and SACE as well. So we met a couple weeks ago at the facilities committee and kind of had our first version of that spreadsheet, and what you see in front of you now is a second version, which has a couple more options. So I'll kind of run through, essentially, what this spreadsheet is, and it's just kind of really intended for discussion purposes, but also, like I said, to kind of look at the projects as a whole as we look at the middle school and the high school. So if you look, essentially, there's three options in total. So if you work from the top of the sheet down, you can obviously see option 1, option 2, and option 3. So option 1 says that, okay, Grayson is going to be K1, Byrd is 2-3, and SACE remains 4-5. And then option 2, you can see Grayson and Byrd were both showing as K3 and SACE as 4-5. And then option 3 looks at Grayson and Byrd being K2, with the option for moving third grade over to SACE. So that's the way the spreadsheet is set up, kind of top to bottom. And then what we set up is sort of 5 different scenarios where it essentially says how much we would potentially build. So from left to right, we're kind of showing a lean low, then we call it a low, a mid high, and then a high. So, and I'll kind of work my way across the spreadsheet, and then we can kind of talk about kind of how we arrived at some of the numbers. So when you look at, sort of a lean low scenario, essentially what we're showing is 3 additional classrooms for both Grayson and Byrd, and then 2 additional classrooms at SACE. And then what we would show then is a larger classroom for option 3 at SACE. So there we're showing a total of 14 classrooms being added to SACE. When you start to look at the next category over to the right, which is the low category, we're running a scenario there where instead of adding 3, 3, and 2, we're showing 4, 4, and 3. So Grayson and Byrd would both get 4, and SACE would get 3, and then we would add 17 classrooms at SACE. So one thing I should probably hit here is that, with each of these options in parentheses, then we're sort of showing what the impact would be for pre-K, as well as support classrooms. So with the lean low and the low, we're saying that essentially no pre-K and no support for the lean low, and no pre-K and less support classrooms for the low option. And then when we work towards the mid, that's looking at 5, 5, and 4. So Grayson and Byrd receive 5, SACE would receive 4 for options 1 and 2, And then the mid option for option 3 for the mid would be 20 classrooms. And with that option, again, still no pre-K, a little bit more support classrooms, but still a little bit less. And then when you start to look at the mid-high, we're showing 6, 6, and 6 for Grayson, Byrd, and SACE for those options 1 and 2. And then for that SACE, we're showing 22 classrooms addition. So that this scenario would have no pre-K continued, but still what we would call a full assortment of support classrooms. And the way we were looking at it when we say full, that would be, in conversations, essentially having really the adequate amount of support space for the potential for, as students are coming into district, towards the higher curves in those power school demographics. And then finally on the high side, we're showing 8 at Grayson, 6 at Byrd, and 6 at SACE for options 1 and 2, and then 22 classrooms again for option 3 there at SACE. So that gives you pre-K and the full support classroom assortment with that as well. So then how we arrived at the numbers was, and this is obviously very conceptual, but we took some square footages from some previous designs that we've done here at the district on the size and kind of classrooms and so forth, and arrived at some square footage numbers. And then working with SiteLogic, we developed a cost of $450 a square foot. That would include both vertical construction and site construction to arrive at that sort of total hard construction cost that you see for each of the options and scenarios there. And then the total project cost, that reserves an additional 25% for soft costs in addition. So that gives you sort of a scenario for each of those. So really, I think this was a tool to try, at least kind of have some discussion around, what some scenarios would look like and just order of magnitude and how many classrooms. Obviously there's still a lot of discussion around which option in terms of grade configuration at the schools as well. So I think at a high level, that's sort of how this is set up here.
Adam, can you speak to whether or not expanding cafeterias and kitchens, like where do you see that?
Yeah, that's a good point. So note number 2 here, option 1, because of the way that we see the grades being aligned there, does not anticipate any additional student dining or kitchen space. But with option 2 and option 3, we did include in the square footage cost some additional student and dining space.
Okay, so I guess that was my larger question, was those needed expansions to cafeterias and the kitchens are included in those numbers?
In option 2 and 3, correct.
Is that why there's a little more cost in option 2 and 3 also?
That's part of the reason, correct. Yeah.
So why is that? Why would option 2 and 3 need additional dining and kitchen space and not option 1?
So option 3 for SACE, that would have to do with just bringing a full 3rd grade over to that facility. And then for option 2, our thought there was, I think the additional kitchen space would be there at James Byrd from what we were looking at with that option. So it'd only be at James Byrd we would see additional kitchen space and cafeteria, but with option 3, with bringing a full grade level over, we would see the need there.
So you're saying the James Byrd capacity is not as good as the Nancy Grayson capacity when it comes to dining? Is that
correct?
Is that my understanding?
Yeah, correct.
Or your understanding?
Yeah.
If we're taking kids out of Nancy Grayson and taking kids out of James Byrd, they're flip-flopping. One would be K1, right? Then the other one would be 2 and 3.
For option 1?
That's option 1. Why do we need extra classrooms?
Really just due to enrollment, due to what we see with an increase in student population.
If we don't have the increase, do we have to still add the rooms?
I think part of it comes down to some of the support as well, support classrooms. I think we talked about trying to get to a point, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we were 12 deep total. I think that was minimally
12 teachers per grade level, Fred.
Okay.
Not including LORs. So we need to land in our talks somewhere between 13 and 14 teachers per grade level.
Okay.
The difficulty is when you get an odd number,
Right.
then we kind of deal with what we're dealing with now, where one building, by definition has higher class grade, class sizes.
All right. So if the addition students don't come, do we have to add rooms? Can we flip the two schools? The two we had at one and two. I'm trying to figure out why I need classrooms if I'm bringing cutting the class size down.
Cutting class size down.
Excuse me, because I got those 2 grades I had at Jamesburg, now at Nancy Grace, and I had the 2 grades at Nancy Grace and at Jamesburg. Why do I need extra classrooms? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I do think part of it is providing the ample amount of support space as well. I think in discussions we have been, looking at, I think part of that equation is, do you want additional support space as well for consideration? So with option 1, well, really with all the options. So we try to provide, some level of providing not just classroom space, but the pull-out space for special instruction and some of that support as well.
So in essence, the additional classrooms would be for a supplement.
Well, that, and if we move past 12, call it 12 deep, if we start moving to 13 or 14 deep, that would also supplement the additional space for classroom space.
Can I have a sort of a forest question instead of a tree question. Just looking at the enrollment report that's on the agenda today, our biggest grade, our largest grade in terms of population is 3rd grade at 306.
I believe so.
So I'm looking at it right here. And then our the second highest is our 11th graders at 302. So my question is,
We're tied with 2nd grade for 3
oh yeah, yes,
we have that magic bubble.
2nd and 11th
for
are
2nd
tied.
and 3rd
So
grade.
we have kind of a 2-year bubble in 2nd and 3rd grade.
No, we have a 3-year bubble, I would say, because
we're
that's
at
298.
So we okay, but then we dropped to 241. So kindergarten's our lowest in the whole district right now.
Correct, and I think
Probably not going to keep trending that way, based on what.
based on our projections, I mean, I think that kindergarten number helped me realize that those projection enrollments are for the entire system. They're not going to come in just at the one specific grade level in kindergarten and blow up. We're going to get pockets everywhere. Am I right in saying that, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, to your point, it's not just necessarily going to be kindergarten. I do think we got the power school demographics, and I think we had some of the October 1st enrollments, and we did notice that, as we discussed, there has been a sort of a dip in the kindergarten this year, which sort of a different reading than what the power school demographics was showing, which was significant growth over the next 10 years. So
Yeah. So
I think your point is this year indicative of, from the kindergarten standpoint, of what's coming through the system going to hold true, closer to that 240 number, or is it going to jump? That's the part.
and so my real question is, we have 302 students in 11th grade. So I'm trying to think off into the future. This bubble is going to keep going. I mean, this bubble is very soon, or very soon going to be a SACE problem, and then it will be a middle school problem, and then it'll be a high school problem. If I'm seeing that we already have 302 students in 11th grade in the high school, does that suggest that our middle school and high school facilities can handle this bubble?
So
And the elementary school is really where we need to be focusing?
SACE cannot currently handle what's coming. To my mind, they're at 10 teachers per grade level, 11 with LORs. The board, I think rightly so, acted proactively at the middle school and got those class numbers, got those teachers to 12. We've backfilled at the lower elementaries to get them above 12, 12 or 13. The high school, even though Mrs. Luffy just walked in, has a little more flexibility in terms of, kids by their junior or senior year are taking dual enrollments. They're not all in the building at the same time. So, the what's flashing red for next year is SACE, and getting that to be able to handle those three grade levels behind.
So I guess what I'm asking is, if we do one of these blue, yellow, or green projects, is our district in pretty good shape for bubbles? We're off into the future because of the middle school and high school construction and whatnot, and the flexibility that we have at the middle school.
I mean, I think our conversations were around if we can get to 12 at the middle school and elementary levels, we can ride out the storm. 13 would be better, but we can ride it because we're already experiencing some of the storm now.
Agreed. And I think to your point, I think when you look at what we call the functional capacity of each building, including the middle school and high school, there is, at least from what we see, a little bit more space available than the elementary level. So, although, to your point, it should be noted, third grade looks like right now that's the bubble. And as you pointed, Mr. August, that's going to be moving into SACE very soon. The question is, what's the trend going to continue in terms of enrollment?
Yeah, and a further question would be, like we have projections, but we don't obviously know what's coming. But to be prepared, that's where these additional builds would come in, so that we could, if we, I'm not saying we should, but if we needed to go to 14 because we are experiencing the top shelf of those enrollment projections, we have a classroom to put a teacher in. Okay, so I mean, it's really kind of just like, to my mind, like where in this matrix can we afford, and are we comfortable to be able to be prepared for what we think is coming? What we think is coming, we think we can get by with 13 teachers per grade level. Okay, but I would just again throw out the caveat. The third grade right now is the prime example of what a odd number of teachers between two K3 buildings, that's the drawback that we suffer there, because we simply, you have to, in that configuration, you almost have to have an even number of teachers, or you get the disparity that we have in third grade at Grayson.
So we're going to have to, excuse me, we're going to have more teachers.
So, to my mind, Fred, I can say assuredly that I think we're going to have to hire at least one teacher at SACE in fourth grade for next year. And that, whether there's some kind of reconfiguration that goes on, like with moving folks, maybe. But I can't see us not having at least one fourth grade teacher next year.
Okay, that's not a big.
And remember, board, Mrs. Mallory and I walked the building. We found 4 spaces there that we can, without building, convert to classroom spaces. So,
but they're not great, right?
I don't know that they're terrible, Dr. Lyman. They might need some sprucing up, a little bit of adjustments, but they're large enough to accommodate the classes. Okay, and I've certainly seen worse situations in my career.
Could either you, Mr. August, or you can sort of pros and cons of the SACE, kind of focusing on SACE versus focusing on the elementary schools? So, like, what are the pros and cons between blue and yellow and versus green?
Well, I think, what Mr. August mentioned in terms of trying to have an even number, I think that's one consideration, for the models. I think, the other, I think you kind of look at the cost for some of the SACE models, and it, it's more, right?
More.
In terms of pulling third grade over, and that's, like I said, part of that's based upon just the number of classrooms. Part of that is based upon the need for additional cafeteria and kitchen space. And the way it sort of sets up with that SACE model then is we really do have very adequate room in Grayson and Byrd. It's almost just the way the kind of numbers work out that there's plenty of breathing room in the buildings at that point if you move all of third grade out. So I'd say in terms of cons for that option, those are probably them. The pros, I think, for SACE is, like we said, I think it allows you to kind of have all of that grade in one school there and create a 3-4-5 center. So, I mean, I would say that, from looking at the SACE version versus that's probably the couple that stick out to me. So
So this is I'm not a construction expert, I'm a social worker question. Is it easier because SACE is a newer building? Is it easier to do construction on a building where you're not going to run into bats living in the ceiling? And
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
Terracotta pipes.
Yeah, I
Terracotta
mean,
pipes, yeah.
well, listen, I think to your point, sort of right now we're talking about sort of just strictly dollars and space, right? But I think what you're bringing up is a valid point, which is you're talking about construction at one building versus three, and inherently that's kind of three mini projects occurring at one time versus one. So that's
Would there be a what do they call it? Since everything's all there in one place, is there a savings because
our site logic friends are in the room, so I'm kind of looking over a little bit because I don't want to speak too much for them. But
the phrase I was looking for was economies of scale.
I think to your point, you're kind of you're pouring concrete at one building versus three. So is there a
And
little bit of
backhoe versus-
economy of scale?
Has been at one building versus three, so there is an economy of scale. You get more product.
Well, related to that, and I'm not advocating a particular direction, but just some things to consider. I mean, when I walk over to like Nancy Grayson, like I don't see like a ton of extra space for classrooms. Like we can build those classrooms, but like the real estate, I don't know. It's like it's kind of in high demand, right? It's going to take. And same thing. I mean, but you're hanging out between Jamesburg and the intermediate school, and there's lots of real estate there, right? I mean, there's lots of room to build stuff. And one other thing that I would just consider, I mean, it's my understanding that, we have to think about staffing these schools, right? And as the schools grow, like we're already pushing, like our elementary school principals to the limit, maybe beyond the limit. And if you were to create a situation where Nancy Grayson and James Bird were like minus a grade, then probably that would be like the right capacity for like one principal. And then at the intermediate school, like you add an additional principal, right, to sort of cover like the extra bodies there. And that might sort of make more sense, like administratively, to sort of manage the.
Yeah, and I thank you for bringing that up, Dr. Goetz. Like, I think that is the other part with the green line we would have to address, is that building would be close to, I think, what the middle school is, population-wise.
I mean, it would have
Three,
to be.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be three
And
grades.
we have
Yeah.
three
Depending on the year.
principals at the middle school, and if you were to talk to them, they wouldn't, they wouldn't say they have their feet up on their desks all day. They're pretty busy.
Yeah.
So with that number, we are probably, definitely looking for at least one more admin, and maybe a dean of students, or at least to manage that building. Additionally, we'd have to figure out the counseling services and all those other things that we might need to add to a population that big. So yeah, there would be additional.
Right. And I guess, just kind of back of the envelope sort of thing, like that seems more attractive because it's like if all three schools are kind of pushed to the limit right now and we just sort of naturally let them grow in proportion to how they've been growing, like they're already pushed to the limit, right? So then what do you start doing? Like hiring an administrator that's shared between buildings or something to take up the load, which seems like doable but less efficient than creating, two K3 schools that are sort of manageable by like the current administrative team, and then creating this kind of gigantic intermediate school that you could sort of staff appropriately for the grade. And again, I'm just sort of thinking out loud as we sort of consider these issues.
Yeah.
One other comment to make here. I just looking at the enrollment, and maybe you guys are doing your own calculations and stuff, but one way, it's hard to look, and Michael, this gets to your point, like when you look at individual grades, there's a lot of variance grade to grade. So I kind of lumped them into groups of 4. I took out the kindergarten because the math doesn't work out right? So you take like 1st through 4th grade, and you take 5th through 8th grade, and then you take 9th through 12th grade. And if you take that like 1st through 4th grade and 9th through 12th, there's a 7% increase in the number of students in 1st through 4th versus 9th through 12th, right? So, so if we were to see this on a sort of, if we were to draw a kind of like regression line through these, well, just a trend line through these averages, like, I mean, that's sort of what we're looking at, right? So I take that to mean that like in 8 years, when our 1st and 4th graders are now 9th and 12th graders, if the same trend continues, we would have 7% more students in 1st through 4th. Now, of course, assuming linear trends is a dangerous thing to do because trends are never linear. But if, I mean, with lack of any better information, right, that might be the way to go. Like in 8 years, maybe assuming 7% more students 1st through 4th. At least that's where my head is.
I think the Power School projections had us around 4 or 5%. Do you remember? Do you recall?
Yeah, probably on the
Or like,
more,
so the Power School worst case scenarios had us, I think at 4 or 5% growth for a number of years, and then it does trail back down. You know, like with a peak, I think at 2028, 2029, then slowly, you know, projected to come down. But you know, once you're out that far, you know, you need to keep up with your projections.
Or is this an addition to the high school and junior high we're looking at this here, the elementary, or is it separate?
So Fred, you may remember, you know, when I first got here, we talked about Ship Take Shape. We talked about what we needed to do at the middle school, what we needed to do at the high school, and then, you know, a plan to get us to elementary, to address elementary. So we didn't get so lucky with the middle school project. That one was, the bids came in more than we wanted to pay on that one, but we did it anyway. But we got super lucky on the stadium and, you know, what's on the agenda tonight from a cost-wise perspective, because they're way under what we had budgeted. So that has allowed funds to be shifted potentially for the elementary projects more than what we had initially thought.
So we're going to take money, the money was left over from the stadium, $1 million something? Or?
So I don't know that it's that linear to in terms of we're just going to, we have our borrowing capacity. We have what we've already borrowed. It really comes down to our borrowing capacity and how much we can continue to borrow under our debt service limit. Okay, so I think when PFM was here, you know, acknowledging the budget needs to be balanced for that to work. I think their number was somewhere around 10 million available, minus maybe stadium lights. So that put us around 9.5 of monies that we could borrow. I won't want to put Joanne on the spot too much, but there are some funds, I think, in our fund balance designated towards construction. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think just a little over 2 million.
Okay, so there are funds there, and there are a number of I think difficult decisions to make. Yeah, if I had to like summarize this, the blue line, you know, option 1 is obviously the cheapest for us, but it has the pain of realignment, which the board may not want to go through. Option 2 is building onto old buildings, and you know, we don't maybe get as much bang for our buck. Green, I think, would be what everyone would like to do, because it is maybe what I would consider an overbuild. I don't mean that as a negative. As long as we go far enough on the right to make sure that we have capacity in the 3rd grade that we're adding there. But it does free up oceans of space at Grayson and Byrd, that, you know, is nice to have. So, you know, obviously it's the more expensive option. So, you know, where to land, you know, is really contingent upon like picking a lane, and then trying to match up what our you know, construction budget / borrow can support.
I mean, for me, we have expenses coming up, a lot of expenses, and the budget that we don't know what's going to be the future of that. So I'm looking at more necessity than want. And so the option 1 is that, I'm trying to find out, is that a necessity or that a want?
So they're all, Fred, I think, designed to meet a need. So, if you do the lean low, obviously the least expensive option, it adds space where for all three options, it adds space in buildings that are tight. And option 1 and 2 do that. Obviously the lean low for both is what I think Adam and I had talked about being like the bare minimum that we can get by and handle what's coming. Okay.
Is that to cover the future?
Yeah. So I think that's the bigger picture, Fred, is that, the lean low meets what we think is coming. Okay. It may not be as comfortable, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
No, but as we mentioned, that's still no pre-K. I mean, obviously that's something we pulled out to make the space, right? So that's still continue with no pre-K and less support space, and no additional new support space. So, that's, when you look at that model, those are the two things I would mention with the kind of the lean low. But I do think, to your point, it can get us to that minimum number of classes, looking at a potential for 13 in some of those scenarios.
Adam, looking at option 3, I don't understand why all of option 3s don't allow for pre-K. Because if you're taking 3rd grade out of Nancy Grayson and James Byrd, there would be a lot of space there. I'm not sure why you couldn't have pre-K.
That's something we could look at in that option.
So
For option, I think you're saying for option 3.
Option 3, it just
Option
seems like
3.
every single one.
so we could actually, I think, to your point,
Yeah, I think
put
you're-
pre-K in, Nancy Grayson or Bird, or
I think that's what,
I mean,
Yeah,
we're not going to build pre-K space, but
Yeah, you're not building pre-K, but there would
Yeah.
be space for pre-K in Nancy Grayson and James Byrd.
So then the question would be, it's really just how much support space do you build at SACE at that point, right? Because what we're showing is moving a minimum of 12 classrooms over plus, say, 2 support classrooms for 14 total with that option. So, but I think you're right that you probably could have pre-K then at Grayson and Byrd.
but that option 3 lean low truly is going to make it tight, I believe, right, Adam, at SACE?
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, that's only saying 1 or 2 support classrooms.
Right.
If you go to 13, then we're only adding 1 additional support.
And I think you just said this, but remind me how many classrooms per grade we have at SACE right now?
10 per grade.
So we have 10 per grade. Adding 14 classrooms. I don't know. I guess I mean, maybe 14 is the right number, but I in my head I have like 13, right? So it's like, so if you had like 11 classrooms for each of those grades, that seems like the minimum necessary.
I would say the 12 is the minimum that I would be comfortable with, Dr. Goetz, to get those numbers reasonable. So if you're bringing thank you. I think that makes sense. If we go out and build 14 classrooms at SACE, and we're saying we need 12 per grade level, then we have two additional support spots. That could be special ed classroom, some other designation for those 2 other classrooms. And we may have to, if we need to get to 13, then we would have to reclaim one of those. We wouldn't reclaim a special ed classroom,
Right.
But we probably need at least maybe 2 special ed classrooms, I would think.
is there are there educational benefits to having the pre-K in our buildings, or is it sort of moot?
I think it helps us down the line, in that it starts those kids have had a school experience. So when they hit kindergarten, they kind of know how school works. And that's beneficial, I would say, behaviorally and socially. And I know our kindergarten teachers probably would thoroughly enjoy that. Keep in mind, with the green option, those 14 classrooms don't count the 4 reclaimed spaces that already exist there. Okay, so if the board decides to do lean low, we build 14. There's actually 4 more there that could be used in other capacities. Okay, so like there's a sneaky 4 classrooms there that we don't have to build, that could be repurposed. So that helps that. To my mind, that helps the green argument, on the lower end, because we have the space that's currently being used differently that could be used directly for instruction.
I mean, one other thing that I'm thinking about just while we're talking about this is that, smaller, I mean, in my understanding, smaller class sizes are more important for lower grades. If you free up a lot of space in Nancy Grayson and James Byrd, and we decide at some point that we have the money to support it, then you have like the room to hire additional teachers, lower those class sizes, where like low class size is sort of most critical. Whereas if you just do, option 1 or option 2, you're sort of keeping things tight at Nancy Grayson and James Byrd, and we're still in a tight place. And if we end up with bubble years or whatever, like we're gonna still have to have like larger class sizes, because it's just gonna fit the space. But if you have extra space, then you can hire extra teachers, keep the classroom space low if there were a bubble situation.
Do you know if there's any stipulations on the SAIS building, the land around the school?
The land?
Yes.
No, actually, I mean, as I think Dr. Goetz mentioned earlier, SACE probably has some of the best available space that we would see for future additions.
Land around it was stipulated. Do you know that? People that sold the land to the school district stipulated that it had to be a conservation used for specific stuff.
There is a plot of land over there that cannot be developed. It
Yes.
has to be kept as an environmental area.
Okay, we'd have to double check the spot. We did, 'cause if you recall, I mean, about a year and a half ago, we did show some initial concepts of what it could look like to have some classroom additions. So we can double check that to make sure that those aren't in that area. So
Yeah, just to circle back, board. So option 3, wherever it says SACE and the number of classrooms, put a range, because it's going to be 14 to 18, 17 to 21, 20 to 24, because we have space there that we could reclaim, which may help if with the budgets when we decide what exact number we build, if that's the path the board wants to take on.
If we did that, Bill, could you give us a rundown of the teachers and financial effect for that period, for like a 10-year out, and the associated support staff that would be needed?
Yeah, I can work out some rough numbers to from the staffing side. We need to get it to 12. We need four teachers at SACE.
Right.
So I mean that's the initial stop in this model. I mean you need at least another principal. And to do it right, you'd probably need 2
For the green model?
for the green model.
Only 4 teachers to get us out. How many kids I can't remember what the power school said we were going to get within the 10-year range, 300 something?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
With the power school,
In the future, how big
how
are
many
those kindergarten
teachers
classes?
is that power school going to add to our district overall?
I'm not sure that I don't think they assigned teacher numbers to it, because that's typically a district decision on the size of the classes. I don't believe, but
I mean, if they all fit in, it's okay. You don't need a teacher, but if we're going to add a bunch just to try to get an idea.
Yeah.
I have one other question, basically for Rochelle. SACES is 2 stories, and with the 450 a square foot, does that cover 2-story stuff? Or is this all based on a single story, just guesstimate?
It's just that's square foot and the site plan addition within the 450.
Okay.
So it might be a little cheaper because the site has second floor wouldn't have site work.
Just asking.
Yeah, just making a note here on option 3. It looks like the mid-high and the high, those numbers are exactly the same. There's no difference.
Yeah, I had the same question.
I just wanted to verify that.
If so, we want the high.
Right? Yeah, whatever that means.
Well, but there's the same number of classrooms too. It's not.
Yeah, everything's the same.
So that's as good as it gets.
Right.
yeah, I think in that scenario we saw 22 being the absolute
Okay.
really cap after you move all of third grade over. So once you carry that through, with options 1 and 2, that was just having a little bit additional space at the other schools.
And then, do we currently have a pre-K program at G Blues?
No,
So there's nothing in our district at all.
we have no pre-K.
Wait, we have pre-K, but it's not in any of our buildings.
Yeah, correct. It's not housed in our building. Sorry.
So pre-K exists, it's just not in our buildings.
We support it through the lunch program.
But it used to be in our buildings.
We did.
Right. So is it possible, looking at these options, just going off option 1, the high option is the only one that includes pre-K. Is it possible to do something like a lean low and then include pre-K? Or is it,
Yeah, I mean, so, we put together, so we cobbled together these options. So essentially, you could say, with any of the options, some of those additional classrooms are pre-K. And then it's a balance of how many classrooms you want to have per grade level, plus how many support classrooms. So yeah, there could very well be different iterations that we could run here.
so it's movable, it's not?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. But we wanted to, kind of provide a framework to understand, when you're talking about how much space and how we align and look at the different, or how we could potentially align the schools from grade level, kind of what that looks like. Because like I said, I think we're trying to understand, total project borrowing, versus some other decisions. So this is, and obviously we haven't really drawn really anything. So this is, kind of a precursor to even, any kind of, you can get into really kind of schematic design and further testing any of the concepts. So,
And then as far as the amount of time it would take these projects, like is one like a multi-year, or is one much quicker to get done than the other, as far as doing construction at one building versus multiple? Is that going to have to be broken up over a couple years, or how do you guys anticipate seeing that happen?
yeah, so I mean, obviously the smaller the addition, probably a little bit easier any kind of site approvals. Once you start to get a larger addition, it really comes down to if you're disturbing more than an acre, like we've seen with other projects here, at the district that, we've done some projects that are under the acre, we've done some that are over. Once you go over that acre disturbance, it's just a lengthier process. So we have to determine if, kind of looking at option 3, that's the one that has the biggest footprint addition. Are we kind of on that cusp or not once you look at stormwater and some other things? So I wouldn't have a clean answer for you on that duration, but, I mean, my sense is, and then you have to look at how you would kind of bid out the projects and, kind of organize construction and so forth at the 3 different schools. And is there any kind of phasing associated with that, depending on students moving, because you obviously can't do all the work at one time. So there's probably some other variables that we'd have to discuss if you were to look at option 1 versus option 2, in terms of student disruption and so forth. So,
Adam, would you think with option 3 we would maybe need to add parking at that building as well?
that's the part that is going to be a little tough to say until we kind of go through some of the zoning. So, but you're talking about additional teachers there. So, and staff, I mean, there's a potential that some additional parking. I think that's why we wanted to include somewhat of a site work budget inside of that square footage number.
Okay.
So.
And to what Mr. Goetz said about the space at Nancy Grayson, is there any concern there with adding on to, and then additional parking requirements there possibly as well if you're?
At a high level, we did take a look at it from a high level. It appears doable. It is a tight site, but we do think that there is some available land to have a smaller addition over there. So
Probably just means a smaller playground, something like that.
If you look at the tax map, if the tax map's right, there's maybe 3 or 4 acres to the backside of Grayson, and it looks like there's a right of way, but I don't know for sure.
You look back there, there's a giant rock. I mean, a big monster sitting in that ground back there past the playground. So.
Fred, we'll just push that into a sinkhole.
If we go, what money? How much money do we have? I mean, we can look at all this stuff. How much money do we have to do what? I guess that's my question.
I'm sorry, Fred.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Can you repeat the
I
question?
mean, I'm looking at all these things and all these options. How much money do we have to do what?
So, and I'll maybe defer over to Joanne. I think when PFM was here, they talked about with a balanced budget, we had some kind of borrowing capacity of $10 million, minus additional costs that we may spend at the stadium for lights. Okay, so I would say with borrowing capacity, we have about 9.5 plus whatever's in our fund balance dedicated for construction purposes. Joanne, take it away if you can improve.
I know everybody keeps saying this. I'm just going to remind everybody, like PFM always reminds us, that's with a balanced budget. There are other areas and line items increasing, so it's just not that easy to answer that because
How much? Let me ask you this: if we do a fund balance, we have $12 million, and from my saw that's $12 million. $1.2 million is not unobligated, so that means the rest of that money is obligated to something, correct? So we don't. That money in fund balance is not free, free flowing.
Yeah, there's several lines in fund balance that are either assigned or committed. So the board can commit the funds and the business administrator can assign the funds. So like maintenance department has some fund balance, technology has some fund balance. There's the money that the buildings are allowed to keep if they don't spend it from the prior year that roll over for one-time expenses. That those numbers are sitting in fund balance, and then there's an entry done once a year to balance that and adjust that accordingly. So yes, there are a lot of line items designated for use. The board can always reassign things. I can tell you that Mrs. Lentz said that she liked to keep 2 years worth of technology, with the purchasing of Chromebooks in the technology fund balance. I know that she kept a certain amount in the capital projects list for the items that the board approves every year for the maintenance that's outside of like a construction project, the stuff that we want to do in-house, so to speak, and contract ourselves to do. So like on a 5-year lookout, she kept a certain number of years in there for that. So you have to be careful when you reassign it because you will be affecting something every time you do that. So it depends on what the priority list looks like.
But every time we take money out, fund balance is our cash flow, or correct? We have money.
It's almost like kind of like your savings account.
Yes. So every time we take money out of that savings account, that's less money for us.
Yeah, if you keep spending it, yeah, and it's also used to balance the budget at the end of the year, or sometimes we put money in it if you have a good year and your revenue exceeds your expenses, and some years you take money out of it because your expenses exceeded your revenues. So remember, to balance the 24-25 budget, it was projected we would need $3.7 million of fund balance to do that, and then we got the equity money, or which I think
Ready to learn.
yeah, it brought it down to I think a $2.2 million deficit. Is that real? It depends on what happens with our revenue flow, if it comes in at or above, or our expenses. Like if we get hit with a lot of unknown expenses or under budgeted items. We're only a couple months into the 24-25 school year, so it's way too early to look at that and project if we're going to hit that $2.2 million that we need out of fund balance, or if we're going to be in better shape.
So, Fred, I would just say we could probably expect some sort of budget deficit coming out of this year, having absorbed the ESSER positions. Like that's just not going away. So whether we get some windfall, whether we get some other property stuff, that comes in, but I would I would say we definitely have, a great chance of having a deficit coming off this year.
So that's what I'm afraid of. When you tell me deficit, if I do all these things, where do I make up the deficit? How do I make up the deficit? If I'm going to have a deficit, if I do all this building and teachers and everything, how do I make it up? I mean, I can only tax the people so much for it. Well, I'm trying to find out how do I make that difference up? That's my biggest fear.
The index this coming year was 5.3.
0.3?
For the upcoming school year? Yeah, it dropped from 7.1 this year. So the cap that you can do as far as the Act 1 index for 25-26 is 5.3%. So it is falling, which Mrs. Lentz had said, we weren't going to stay up at the 7.1. So we're going to get, even going to the index will not give us as much revenue. I mean, we get revenue on the growth, so we could get more than what it looks like, but you're not going to get all of the growth or increase because of the index, because it's coming back down.
To your point, Fred, our hands are fairly tied.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I mean. I mean,
Yeah.
if we do all these projects and then we don't have any money, what do we do? That's what I'm apprehensive. I want to know if I do the projects that I got the money, or I'm going to get the money. And so I understand your elementary school, but I can say, yeah, go ahead and do the top part, but I don't have no money to handle it. You know what I'm saying?
Correct. Yeah, I think tonight's conversation was just to show there could be a need for this space. And like I said, I know that other decisions are coming up later in the next meeting. We just want to provide an overall picture as far as what every project could look like. So, this is just the beginning of that conversation on the elementary side.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Adam? Thank you so much, Adam. A weighty topic for sure. Did you want to go?
I think it's up to, it's an important topic regarding the start times of school.
Okay, can we transition to that? So we go from one very, very heavy topic to an equally heavy topic, but perhaps an equally important one. So at the outreach committee meeting, we reviewed this information about changing our start times. The committee felt it was best to kind of get this before the whole board. Administration has worked hard to come up with what we think are 3 viable options for changing our start time. And I realize we have a meeting to get to, so I will be as succinct as I can be. So really asking the question, why change our start times at all? And I would submit that district goals that we've committed to are student and staff engagement and student and staff well-being. The research shows pretty emphatically, I think Mrs. DeLong detailed that some time ago, that you get better mental and emotional health for our students, some minor academic performance, behavioral improvements. The one quote I read that I thought was funny is, dealing with teenagers is easier when they are well rested. Benefit of reduced tardiness and absences. And we have a school system that aligns to the customers or teenagers' sleep patterns. And I think I have a statistic coming up here that I thought was particularly interesting about the difference between adult and adolescent brains when it comes for the need for sleep. Less reliance on caffeine. I don't know about that, but sure. And then a reduced risk of car accidents and injuries. And I added this one, even though this isn't necessarily in the research, but there's the opportunity that cyber school, which can get up anytime they want to do their work, maybe a barrier could be if we start a little bit later, those folks would be less driven to maybe, leave the system. So that was a Mr. August ad there. Next slide, please. This is just some information with some studies linked. The one I liked in particular is the difference between, to ask a teen to be up and alert at 7:30 is like asking an adult to be up and active at 5:30 in the morning due to the neurological differences. And think about, as an adult, how peppy you are maybe at 5:30 in the morning. I know that I am not. And I don't know that I'm peppy at 7:30. But that is, an important thing to remember of they may look like fully grown adults, but teenagers are still developing until their mid-20s, neurologically. The other study that I thought was interesting is, if there's a flip and we decide to flip elementaries, at least one study showed that there's no discernible impact on achievement for those students, which would be a worry. Are we changing one problem for another? And those 2018 statistics about the average start time, I would say, are probably a little bit out of date, as there have been several systems. The Philadelphia system has changed to start after 9, as have several other school districts around that part of the state. So I would think that time has already been adjusted. Bear in mind that ours is a 7:25 start, which is already below average, for what is going on in other districts. Next slide, please. Things that we need to consider when we think about a schedule change, and this is clearly not an exhaustive list. We have to think about, if we're going to make a change, and my recommendation is we make a change that is aligned to research and actually benefits the students. We have to keep in mind that we are required to have a certain number of instructional minutes. The board may remember that last year the state loosened up the requirements, to either have minutes or days, but there is still, a requirement to have instructional minutes. A driver, there's some drivers of this, and it's really about our ability to get the one level in and get the other building picked up and dropped off. There are some hard caps on how long it takes to run a bus route. So that's dictating when we can actually start. They are aligned, and we have to consider that. What transportation resources we have available, and what we may need. G Blues, it's awesome, but we are, to my knowledge, the only district in the state that has a elementary school that is defined by the entire district as its boundary, meaning a student from Newburgh can and does go to G Blues, and someone from the other side of the district can too. Most elementaries are, have a attendance zone. So G Blues, it's not a deal breaker, but it definitely complicates it a little bit, and it drives things as well as our career technical center. Like, those students need to be able to get there, to their school on time and have enough minutes there, and obviously just as important as the benefits to students in my mind is to consider the impact on parents. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to run through these pretty quick. We had a healthy response to the survey, 720 responses. Not all of them are unique. You can keep rolling. You can see it was mostly parents at this point. We asked them about routines, how many times they want to complete it. You keep rolling for me, please. So stopping at this one, I threw kind of a summary of this. When do their students usually wake up? And this is a mix of elementary and secondary students. Okay, so take that with a grain of salt. Over half of our students' parents are reporting that they wake their kids up before 6:15. Okay, so I think that's pretty legit. You keep rolling, please. It talks about how they get to the bus. This is another good slide, I thought, in terms of information back to us. This is how much do they participate in after-school activities. Over half of our students are reported to spend 6 or more hours in after-school physical activities in the week. That factors into like the end times and how late they're getting home from those events as well. That deals with if you want to roll to the next green button. I thought this was kind of interesting. How often does your child seem sleepy or sleep deprived during the week? 69.3 parents reported anywhere from 1 to 5 days a week. They look at their child and would determine that they are sleep deprived. Slightly below that, how much of impact would this be? Obviously, it's kind of all over the place, but 60% report that mornings would be no different or easier if we moved the start time for secondary back, anywhere from 40 to 60 minutes. Next slide, please. From the elementary side, not quite as excited. Pretty even split there, with about 45 saying easy or no impact, and 37 saying slightly or much more challenging if we were to move the day back. So this is, if we moved it back, so looking at the beginning, but also the end. Again, for our secondary students or respondents, pretty evenly split between whether it would make it easier or hard. Good to know. And then from, preferred start times for the high school. This is a slide I think is kind of interesting. 52 saying anywhere from 7:25 to 7:45, a slight majority, and then the other half saying anytime between 8 and 8:45. For elementaries, it's almost a third. When you look at when they would like the times, a third, I think obviously advocating for a flipped schedule, and then 8:45 to 8:30, and then obviously 8:45 or 9, being the other third. Okay, so you want to scroll down a little bit further down to that chart if you could. All right, so option number, we came forward with 3 options. And 2 what I would call variants. It's either the no flip, which means we just simply push the times for both levels back, or the flip, which would mean that we flip elementary and the secondary start times. Okay, so I apologize for the busyness of this, but there are a lot of things to factor in here. On this model, this is us just, hey, we're starting later. Okay, and that means that we start. We would have student drop off at 7:50. The school starting at 8, and then as you can see in the green highlighted, what impact that would have on the elementary start and stop times. This is a model that I personally lived at the elementary level, and it works. My previous spot was we actually started similarly at 7:30. So this gives us some benefit for our secondary students. I think it might be well received, but maybe doesn't hit the research level, what the research is telling us about start times. And I listed some pros and cons there. The other part I would look at would be that because of how we have to shuttle students to get it to work, G Blues would have slightly less instructional hours over the course of a year. This could be balanced out with just having more recess for the other buildings, which I'm guessing the students wouldn't mind. But as you can see, they still meet the required hours with some buffer time, buffer hours available, should we have a snow day or whatnot. So option 2 is a no flip 8:30 start. This puts the end of the secondary day at 3:35 with an 8:30 start, and as you can see, it does bump back the start times for the elementaries pretty severely, and also those bus dismissal times as well. We figure in a worst case scenario, You know, our elementary kids might be on the bus for an hour. You know, that does put them home pretty late, and it could impact, you know, after school, you know, activities that they might want to join. We still have the same issue with G Blues, but as you can see, you know, we still meet all the requirements. The one advantage to this is that, you know, for the secondary students, you know, I think the high school and middle school would appreciate this. You know, we have a pretty big gap between the end of our school day and when most of our sports starts or, you know, events happen. That can be a problematic time. You know, that this certainly closes that gap, and gives less time for mischief to take place, as kids are leaving school and heading to their events. Go ahead and scroll down for me. Option 3 is the true flip, with an 8:45 start for the secondary students, and you know, basically, you know, truly flipping, with start times, you know, basically right around the time the secondary is currently starting. One big advantage I really couldn't get on the screen because it's already full enough is it solves our morning issue, like of shuttling kids to G Blues. That can be an inefficient time, you know, because like we have to like get those kids off, get them on a bus. If a bus is late, we have to wait. So this model has us dropping the buses that have G Blues kids on them directly at G Blues, which means there would be more traffic on campus. I've already, you know, touched base with G Blues, the dean from the university. I'm kind of thinking there aren't a ton of college kids up at 7:15 in the morning, so we're not anticipating a ton of traffic. So, you know, I'd like to think that the drop-offs would go smoothly, and that frees up, you know, that frees us up. In order to the swap of that is we have to get G Blues out. That's why they have to start first. They get out earlier, and we would pick them up first and get them, you know, to the other building. So, you know, I see that as a win transportation efficiency wise, with kind of navigating G Blues' unique situation. You know, it is the biggest change. You can see we don't have a discrepancy among the buildings, and honestly, you know, this is just my opinion, that 3:45 dismissal isn't terrible. You know, we would have to make adjustments for sports and whatnot, but that's not a bad day, I think. So those are the three options. If you want to keep scrolling, I'll try to go as quickly as possible. So next steps, coming out of the committee, you know, based on some work previously, we'd like to schedule a public forum, you know, in November, December. You know, allow parents, students, teachers, you know, just to hear what they have to say. Have the public forum, review the feedback for that, and then have a board decision or non-decision sometime in January or February. Okay, so that's start time 101.
And just so everybody is very clear, this is not to happen until the beginning of the next school year.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Lyman. So that January, February time, a decision is made that gives a fair amount of time for parents to know this is coming and to make, you know, adjustments or and you know, do what they may need to do from a child care situation. So yeah, definitely not a this year thing.
Sorry, Leo.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, I was pretty excited about option.
I'm sorry. What did you say?
I was pretty excited about option 3, but I mean, if it happens next year, no complaint.
Okay. All right. Anything else on that? I think that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions for me?
That was very succinct. Thank you. That was good.
I was surprised to see that 64% are getting 7 to 10 hours of sleep.
Yeah, I was that was a little strange because then if you look at the next slide, it talks about how many people are having sleep deprivation. So I'm not exactly sure what side the error is on, but I did notice that too.
I would just say, because I looked at the data from the survey as well, it seemed like there seemed to be some tentative support for changing something. or at least a recognition that something needs to change. But then a lot of questions later were like, no, don't change anything. Right? Like, my kids are tired, but don't change anything. People seem a little hesitant to change.
Change is never easy.
No.
So, okay.
All right.
We'll apologize. We're running over. The Youth Truth presentation will lead off next time.
All right, heading right into our planning and action meeting. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jim Bard? Mr. Mike Carey?
Here.
Mr. Levi Kressler?
Here.
Dr. Nathan Coates?
Here.
Dr. Michael Lyman?
Here.
Mr. Kirk Noggle?
Here.
Mr. Fred Scott?
Here.
Mr. Darren Donovan?
Here.
Steph Eberly?
Here.
Mr. Blount?
Here.
Ms. Papakar?
I just want to note that the board did meet in executive session at 6 p.m. this evening regarding personnel matters. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we begin our deliberations this evening, let us once again be reminded of our duty to represent all of the children of this school community, regardless of age, sex, race, or creed, and regardless of need or ability. This meeting is being live streamed and uploaded to the district's YouTube channel. May we now have a moment of silence to reflect on our thoughts and plans and actions on behalf of the students of the Shippensburg Area School District. May we also have a moment of silence for Jack Nye, 1957 graduate of the Shippensburg Area Senior High School. Mr. August, are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
Just an update to 5J for clarity purposes. The total spend is the same. The numbers work out, but and all alternative bids are listed. Clearly, there was a little bit of confusion because the total cost didn't reflect all the alternates were not listed. That got us to that total number.
Is there a motion to approve item 1F? The agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Lyman, second by Mr. Noggle. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on to the citizens' comments regarding agenda items. Please identify yourself by name, borough, and township, and indicate which item you are speaking about. Come to the portion to the meeting providing an opportunity for public comment. The board will follow the procedures established in Policy 903, public comment in board meetings, which is accessible through the district's website. This time is designated for district residents and taxpayers to comment on the items listed for action or deliberation on tonight's agenda. All individuals wishing to comment this evening must have completed the document designated for requests to comment and submitted to the board secretary prior to the start of the meeting. Each commenter will preface their comments by announcement of their name and, if applicable, group affiliation. The public comment period is limited to no more than 30 minutes. Each statement made by a commenter will be limited to 3 minutes, and then there'll be a portion after for non-agenda items.
Is anyone wishing to speak? There are cards in the back. If you could just fill it out, it helps with our minutes after the meeting.
Can I fill it out afterwards?
Sure. All right. Actually, let me defer to the president.
I do have other individuals that did sign up. If we can go through those first. Mr. Brenneman.
Good evening, board and attendees. I appreciate your time, and I'll be brief. I have a few items that I'd like to go over. Forgive me, I did not bring my notebook and wrestling my kids before I came here, so just be a little patient. It takes me a second, but I'll try to get it done in 3 minutes. First off, I'd like to discuss action item 5J I had on my list. I believe I had my questions answered after reviewing the document a few times and listening to some of the conversations, so I will strike that from my record to be really covered tonight. I would like to move on to item 6E regarding teamology. I believe that was covered roughly 6 weeks ago, the presentation for that. I'm a huge fan of what I've learned over that evening in the presentation here. I believe it's about $8,900 is the cost to the district for the experiment for the middle school. And regarding the conversations here tonight, and I realize there's a lot of expenses on the table. Mental health, I'm sure, is at everyone's forefront, and I think that one, especially in this community, goes a long way lately. I think that's an easy check the box, so I hope the board decides to support that and go ahead with the experiment here in the middle school for the $8,900. I would love to see that program started. Moving onward, there were a couple other items that were mentioned the last time I was here, and if I missed anything since then, I apologize. I believe that Mr. Lyman mentioned the recommendation to form a volunteer board regarding finances. We spent over, or I should say you all spent over 50 minutes tonight deliberating on which option to choose or discussing the options for expansions to accommodate the bubble in our education system. Regarding that, and thank you, Mr. Scott, for calling it out, there are a lot of allocations in what we are considering to be our free cash flow, and we don't even have a clear understanding of what that is, and we already have a number of lines that are already prioritized and items that are accounting for that monetary funds. At the end of the meeting, I think Mr. Augustine made it clear that he's estimating there to be $9.5 million, or I forget what the number was, I apologize, maybe $9.5 million available, but some of those items are already allocated, and if we look at the various options in those, or the various levels in those three options, after all that deliberation, it really made it clear that there was probably only one option available, and that was the very minimum one, knowing that we already have several other expenses. So we spent 50 minutes, or you all spent 50 minutes talking about something that might only consist of one option. So I would just like to support Mr. Lyman's previous comment that I think it would go a long way to ask for help from experts in the public that are willing to and trusted to have a financial committee of some sort, and it would go a long way to have or maybe it was Mr. Noggle, apologies.
No, that's
Sorry, to go a long way to have those priorities from our free cash flow that we're discussing. We're talking about having $10 million and $9.5 million, but we already have several of those designated and they're marked with priorities, and we don't know what that number is, to Mr. Scott's point. So just thought I would mention that. I would love to see that happen. I believe that covers all my comments. I think I had one more, but forgive me again, I didn't remember to bring my notebook. So thank you all for your time.
For your comments. Mr. Swartz.
I just wanted to, Keith Swartz, I live in the borough of Shippensburg, and I just wanted to make sure that as you discuss the G-Force, which is agenda number 6N, we have the Chief Young here, we have Borough Manager Plaster here, and I represent Borough Council. If you have any questions as to what we can do with the existing school resource officer program to currently meet your needs.
Thank you. All right, student representatives, Mr. Blanc.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My apologies for not being at the previous meetings. I had some conflicts with soccer. I should be at all the rest now. This past weekend was super exciting for the high school students. We had homecoming this past Saturday on October 12th. The theme was the Roaring 20s. It was a huge hit with many decorations and an incredible dance floor. Danielle Lee was elected the title of the Homecoming Queen. With sports news, the boys soccer team is 14-2 heading into their final week of the season. They're currently a 3 seed in the playoffs. If the playoffs were to start today, they're hoping to be able to host multiple district games. The football team is now 8-0 after demolishing Redland during the homecoming football game. They as well are looking to host and get a bye in the district playoffs. Field hockey is going to make the playoffs in their bracket after going 11-4-1 on the season with one game left to play, which was today. I should have checked on that. They are battling for the chance to also host a playoff game, being a 9 seed. Boys cross country just had mid-pens this weekend and qualified for districts. Katie Beckenbaugh and Ben Horgus are both going off to districts for golf. Katie Beckenbaugh has now qualified for states also after finishing 4th in districts. There were 39 students inducted into the National Honor Society on Tuesday, October 8th, which is pretty good. The end of the first marking period is fast approaching, and with that, all classes are now in full swing. The locker and phone policy are being held strictly in the high school currently now. Detentions are now being issued for students that do not have their lockers locked. Halloween is also around the corner, so Trunk or Treat is being held on October 23rd, and all the clubs, or at least most of the clubs in the high school, are going to be participating in that. It is a great way for students to get an idea of what club opportunities are available to them at Sashes. And at the middle school, they just had their largest fundraiser for field trips is just now wrapping up. Students sold popcorn and cookies as well as coffee. Students who sold 10 items will attend an in-school mega party, and those who sold 20 plus will attend the party as well as going to the movies. 6th grade student council interviews will occur on October 22nd, so that's an exciting time for them. And the PBIS classroom stores have become very popular. Students able to purchase things with champ chances. They can also use them to go outside at lunch. That was a big hit back then when I was there. You can go outside and have recess. So that's all for me.
Thank you.
Can I make a quick comment?
Of course.
Mr. Blount and his mom assured me that he can stay for the whole meeting, and he would like to be a full participant in the board. So if you all have questions for him, and I think, is it Adna? Is that how you say it?
Oh yeah, Adna. Yeah.
Adna. I think Adna is also committed to be a little more involved. So I welcome them both and hope that we can use them as resources in our deliberations.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Be careful what you wish for.
Good point.
You can have mine.
You sure you know what you're volunteering for?
We're about to find out.
Franklin County Career Center report.
That's me. I have lots of reports tonight. We had a meeting last week, I believe. No, it was 2 weeks ago, 26th. In the practical nursing program, 100% of the graduates passed their NCLEX exam. That's their second year in a row of all of their graduates passing the NCLEX. That's a big deal. They are at 1,096 students for the year. That is a record attendance, so they're bursting at the seams. They have 52 students that they were to place off of the wait list, and they still have 56 students on the wait list. The big wait list options are vet tech and welding are some of the more popular ones. They also held another suicide prevention event that was very successful. They received a $500,000 grant for some repairs, and they're applying for 3 other $5 million grants for other facilities improvements, especially their roofs. The roofs there are as old as the buildings themselves, so they're pretty
Original.
old. So things are good down there. That's it.
Transportation Committee.
He's not here.
You want to give them a little highlight, Fred?
Yeah, we talked to the Ms. DeLong and Randy, the head of transportation. We went over some things. We got some things straight. Some with misunderstanding. Some things with policy we'd like to include. Me have a more verbal conversation with the bus drivers and with our transportation department to try and air out some items we had. There wasn't much else other than that, was there?
We did just discuss, we hadn't handed in a bus routing plan
Yeah.
to the board, so I see that is on the agenda tonight, so that was gonna happen. and we did discuss empowering some of the, making sure that we look out for the bus drivers,
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to get that accomplished. So, not
Bus
much
drivers
more.
were sort of upset. They wouldn't think they didn't feel, and the bus company didn't feel like they were being included or getting a response of what occurring, whatever. So Randy and Mr. Long going to take care of that.
Outreach Committee.
It's me again, but I should probably defer. I want to say something quick. Most of what the outreach committee talked about we've talked about already. Plus, so it's really just the branding, I think, right?
Yeah, so there are three things. We talked about the survey results that went out for the districts, like brand, like logo. So we talked about that, learned like a little bit about like the marketing of that, and also talked about like once we go through and pick one, how it's going to be like, kind of like an orchestrated, well-planned thing to make sure, like trying to get everybody on the same page using that one brand. Of course, talked about school start times. And then the last thing that we discussed a little bit at the end with Sue Fink was naming rights or potential naming rights for the stadium. So really, it was like the committee of the whole meeting we just had for the most part.
Right. Yeah.
I had a question about the outreach foundation. Do we get a report from the foundation on what the financial situation is? We're supposed to get that on a regular basis. Do you know we get it?
So we can certainly it's in the cycle, Fred. We didn't, certainly in a committee of the whole, I can invite Sue and the foundation to do that.
Okay, but I thought we were supposed to get a monthly report or some quarterly report about what the finances is and coming. We talked about that.
Sue does send out updates as well.
Not to me. I just like to know. I mean, what's going in and what's coming out the foundation.
I'm sure we could have her add the board members to her mailing list.
Policy Committee.
So there are a series of policies on the agenda for tonight for approval. They range from defibrillators, overdose prevention, employee behaviors, insurance. So it's kind of a mixed bag. The big news from the policy committee is that we lost Kim. She's no longer at the district, and so she was the workhorse on that committee and was a really good resource for the district. But
we had a good replacement.
yeah, Leslie just put on yet another hat.
Yep.
So in our last meeting, Leslie ran the meeting, and it went well. We're pretty close to our kind of systematic review of all the policies that have been kind of languishing, some since the 90s. The ones we went over on October 9th are now off to the solicitor to make sure that we've crossed all our T's and dotted all our I's. So that's policy.
Facilities.
Facilities was an interesting meeting, but we did talk about, and Bill, help me out on this. Did we talk about putting graphics on the back of the scoreboard or just a back on the?
So there was a proposal that we got,
$15K.
$15,000 to do advertising on that. I don't believe the committee recommended moving forward.
That's correct. We talked about the advertising on the reverse side, and the committee did not recommend it. There was some discussion on one of our contracts on the stadium project, I believe it was. Some companies are paid as a percentage of the cost, and there's some tracking or some investigation going on. Since the project came in lower, we're taking a look to see how that plays out. Don't have that answer yet. Daryl brought auxiliary gym floor replacement. It's basically Pergo on steroids for the gyms for grade schools and the auxiliary gym. But it was decided just to move on with the auxiliary gym since it was in the contract to get a little bit more information. So he's moving forward with a CoStar vendor. We did get a new price on stadium lights. The original price was $800,000. New price is about 500. If we have to drill some holes, there's some holes out there they think they're going to hit limestone, and I think it was $500 a foot. I think it was $500 a foot to drill. We have to drill how many feet?
16.
16 feet. So that could vary a little bit between $450,000 and $500,000.
Not to interrupt you, Mr. Nagel, but just running those light numbers by K&W, they said there would be additional costs.
What was the additional cost, Bill?
She's going to get back to me. I sent the proposal, so that it wasn't turnkey. That number wasn't turnkey to have the lights come up.
Okay, so more to come on that. So we did talk about, we did get like an update on the traffic study for the stadium. That I believe did occur Friday night. And some documentation went back and forth between the borough and the district, and they kind of have a plan. The borough did ask us to do another traffic study on the next game. Is that weeks from now?
Borough engineers, yeah.
Yeah, HRG, the borough engineers. So,
Carpool to your football games.
track paving. There was a problem that came up with the track paving, and so they had to mill part of the track up and do a repair paving on it. I believe that the base layer has been replaced, and they're going to do the top when, Bill?
So I had a meeting on it with K&W and ECI to get everyone on the same page. So they're looking to start that tomorrow, I think, Wednesday. Yeah, it's a rather long process. We are currently unsure of when the track will be available. We hope to have at least be able to have it open in worst case scenario for some part of our track season, but it may not be ready for the start of track season. Again, it's all weather dependent, but the onus was on making sure that it's done correctly, rather than have problems down the line.
Correct. There also, we did discuss, get an update. There was a deed problem revealed on the prints and with the senior high property. That will soon be resolved, I believe, but that's well underway, so that'll be taken care of. There was a sound system. The speakers were for the scoreboard, but anyhow, the sound system's being installed as an update. It looked like the stands came in today as well. And then the remainder of the meeting, we talked about basically what you heard here tonight with EI on budgets, what can we do, what can't we do. Talked about trying to get a committee put together so that we can do a little deeper dive to find out where we're going to go and what we need to do. So that was facilities.
I just have one real quick question about the track and the issue with it, because I know it's weather dependent. 10-day forecast shows that we have like 4 or 5 straight days in the 70s next week. Is there like, I don't how long is the work anticipated to do?
So
I know we're going to run out of warm days, but next week seems really nice.
Better get it done.
Some of the evening temperature before they dip, not so much the temperature during the day. So it will be close. If you have a nice stretch, they might be able to get it in, but they don't want to jeopardize because it is temperature sensitive.
So based on my meeting this morning, it looked like by October 31st, the lowest, the asphalt grading part base would be done, and then they would be looking for an opportunity. They need, I think, 14 days consecutive of good weather, from what I heard, in order to get the other coats on.
Superintendent, question. This is no cost to the school district, right? This doesn't
No.
bear this. Number two, the second traffic study for the next football game. Who's paying for that?
So I have an email into TPD and Carolyn to see if what additional costs, if any, exist.
So we're going to foot that bill too?
So I would imagine it's going to be a change order to that agreement. Yeah, I talked to Carolyn. It's not going to be a doubling of that, but there should be some additional cost to it. Yes, Fred. I just don't know what they are at this point. I haven't gotten back. I have not heard back from them.
We were told we only needed one. Now we got to do a second one, and we got to pay. We will probably have to pay for that.
I would imagine. Yes.
Okay.
Curriculum report, Dr. Donut.
Good evening, all. This is a little bit of a shift for you all from what you were just discussing. The last 2 weeks ago, you had asked for pre and post-COVID data for PSSAs. So what I have for you tonight is looking at our ELA data both before COVID and after COVID. Next slide. So when we look at third grade, and what I did is I looked at the percentage of students scoring at proficient or advanced. So in 2017-18, you can see we were 59% proficient or advanced. 2018-19, it went up to 62. That was the highest that we've done that I had access to. So the blank is when COVID hit, and you can see that we've not yet recovered to that same point, but we're also not too far off where we were pre-COVID. Next slide. This slide shows you a very similar picture in that the most number of students scoring proficient and advanced occurred in 18-19, the year before COVID, and that yes, we dipped, but we are working on, we haven't gone too far down, and it looks like we might be hovering at a recovery point. Next slide.
Sorry, just real quick. So did you, it sounded like you were saying you didn't have data from before 2017?
Not that I have access to. I'd have to do some deep dives to be able to get that.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. So next slide was grade 5. Grade 5, you can see, paints a similar picture in that we were up at 67 and 66% at proficient and advanced before COVID, and we took a hit after COVID. Next slide. And the same picture for grade 6 as well. Grade 6 is showing us this. This is where it looks like we had the biggest drop from COVID, is in our grade 6 PSSA data. It looks like that about a 27% drop. However, please keep in mind, you're not comparing apples to apples. This is a third grade in one moment compared to the next year's third grade class. Those students are very different students with different backgrounds, so you have to be careful in making any interpretations of the data because you don't know, we haven't controlled for variances that could be anything from gender, from race. There's all kinds of different background factors that could be in effect. Go ahead to the next slide. Grade 7, you can still see same issue. We did sink a little bit after COVID. Go ahead for grade 8. And at grade 8, you're seeing again a very similar picture. When I looked at data for national and state scores, many districts were going through this same thing. So the next thing that I looked at, if you go to the next screen, is I looked at the cohort view. This is the same students as they track through our school. So students who were in third grade in 18-19, they were in fourth grade during the COVID year, during the shutdowns, and then you can see what happened to their scores as they came through 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Next slide. And for the students that were in third grade during COVID, what you're starting to see though is that they have pretty much stayed leveled for proficient and advanced scores after COVID. They didn't continue to decline, so they weren't missing something essential, or our teachers were able to get them back up to the skill level necessary to perform comparably during the PSSAs. Go ahead to the next slide. Our current 7th graders. And the next slide. Our current 6th graders. And I think that was it. Was there one more? Yeah, that's it. So questions on what you're seeing there. There's a lot to look at, and we're going to continue to investigate how we are responding to our student need. I would remind you that we started letters training in 2022-23, and we'll start to see hopefully the benefits of that either this year's 3rd graders, because the people we trained first were the kindergarten and 1st grade teachers, but it's a 2-year training. So we'll see some of the first students coming through with this year's 3rd grade PSSAs, and then hopefully we'll see a continued growth based off of their additional professional development in the science of reading. We are also increasing or changing out the curriculum materials. You all decided to invest in decodables for our earliest learners, which is awesome. And then we've also been providing professional development in differentiation, and our building principals in the K3 world have really, actually K5 world, forgive me, have really been using data to target interventions for students on an individual level in small group instruction. So we are aware that we're not where we used to be, but we have been putting steps in place over the past several years to try to address student learning. Questions?
Is that 50? I see the line 80. You just stopped at 80, but it goes to 100.
It goes to 100, yeah.
So 57% of 100 was students. Okay.
Correct.
Mrs. Dennett. So what did we do different prior to COVID when we hit COVID? And after we came out of COVID, did we go back to what was working or not?
That's one of the questions that we have to investigate. So it could be our staffing may have changed. It could be our student preparation was different. It could be parental support at home was different. It could be, like, there's so many different factors that could go into this of what is different in our student population and in our staff population, and what are we doing within the classroom in terms of pedagogy and curriculum.
I mean, it seems to me if you would back up to what you did before, you would think you would get a similar result as what you had before.
Mr. Nago, if I can just jump in. I mean, I think everyone's got to remember what it was like to do instruction during COVID. And then that was not what was typical. You know, so a lot of students struggled in that format and maybe did not get did not master certain skills in that grade level, which then build from year to year. You know, so I think, you know, when you look at that dip, you know, we're always concerned about a dip.
The kids that have come in have started to transition through those grades. Where are their levels at?
Go ahead.
Without that, weren't affected by COVID. Have they also dropped because they would have been in earlier grades?
Mr. Nago, not to interrupt, I would just say it's important to remember that impacted from everyone. You know, so when you're in isolation and you're not interacting with kids and you're not, you know, getting exposed to vocabulary at daycare, like it's not an easy fix to just be able to flip back to old instruction, because that gap, you know, wasn't pretty impactful, even for kids that weren't in school at the time.
So that loss of learning will compound when you're missing. So think of it this way. If I'll use a math analogy, if you missed how to add, your likelihood, and you completely missed that aspect and or you never mastered that concept, your ability to learn how to multiply will be severely impacted, because multiplication is basically addition on steroids, right? So in the same way for kids who are with ELA, if they've missed phonics because of COVID, if they missed vocabulary development, if they missed all of the read louds that occur in primary school, we can't necessarily make that up in a single year or even in several years. It will take time to build those foundational skills again for those students.
So when our numbers were the highest, the students did not have Chromebooks, correct?
That's kind of where I was going with that. Did we interject technology
What
in the COVID
year?
years?
I'll have to defer to either Mr. Stevens or Dr. Stevens.
I mean, I know for one that I had Chromebooks off and on through 2nd and 3rd grade, so that would probably be, I don't know, 2016, 2017-ish. So it wasn't like everyday use, but multiple times throughout the week.
It was just
like it better or worse?
Oh, I don't know. That was a while ago. Paper, strange.
I mean, one of the reasons why I asked if you had data before 2017 is, I mean, we just had those like 2 years. It's really hard to draw any conclusions about a trend or whatever, or draw any conclusions at all just by looking. I mean,
Yeah.
you'd really need, I mean, especially if you're going to ask this question about the introduction of technology, you'd need to look back, 10 or 15 or 20 years.
What I can do is try to look back through past board meetings to find reports that Mrs. Woodall had prepared, but in her computer files, I do not have that data that I can track down in the computer files. So I'll have to do some diving into other forms.
And I would just point out what would be handy for us to have is a data warehouse.
Yes.
So that we don't have, which is where all the scores for all the things that kids get formative and summative tests on is all in one spot, and then you can run easy reports for the individual kid and these bigger questions. We don't have a data warehouse, and that makes that complicates things. It's a program that we would purchase. I know it's not like we have money laying around for these things, but to answer those questions and to make interventions easier, that's a crucial tool. I used it in another district. It just made life so much easier when everything is in one spot and you don't have to log into 4 different computer programs in order to get the data you need. It's all right in one spot.
Can you give us a proposal?
I sure can. Thanks for asking.
I don't know unless somebody.
Yeah. So absolutely, Dr. Donat and I have already talked about
for education
the need, and so I think you were already piloting some things. We wanted to pilot some things internally first before we came forward with a recommendation. But it's to the point where it's almost not even a luxury item. If we're doing interventions with kids and you want to know where kids are, like being able to go into one spot is really important.
That affects the education and the information you get from that, correct?
It makes the process easier, Fred, when we're sitting down talking about kids and their achievement and our ability to track these things over time. I think you did this by hand, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So
I thought you were our data aware.
Pretty much.
So Fred, to that point, we've already discussed the need to have a one-stop shop data warehouse for our assessments.
You were going to bring something for it anyway.
Yeah.
Is that, would you say that's like our priority number one? That so in comparison, being on the facilities committee, we're looking at different things with our structures, like James Bird's roof, it needs replaced. That's like a priority. What would be the next best thing that we can do as a board to invest in the students' education? Would it be that data warehouse?
It would be up there. honestly, I think I could make a whole list of things, but that would be up there as a tool that we would use to be able to just know how and where our students are easier.
Could we get, like facilities, we have something that is top priority, second priority. Can we get some recommendations from you guys and present that to the board so we can kind of see where we're at and what is something that we can move forward with quickly, make it a priority?
Yeah, absolutely.
Building, education, I'm going for things for education first. So I have to limit some room.
Well, I mean, they all go together, right? I mean, I think everybody knows if we could reduce class sizes considerably, then that would affect our scores a great deal, and you can't reduce class size without, investing in facilities and teachers. So, I mean, it all goes together.
Sorry, I don't want to belabor things. It also, there seemed to be, I don't know, things sort of started to look bad around 5th, 6th, 7th is sort of where the numbers were kind of really dipping. Is that just a function of middle school sucks, or are there? I know we had some interventionists maybe that seems like a critical time.
Definitely, it is a critical time. Could interventionists in the middle school help? Yes. To what degree is it a priority? That's something that we need to look at to see what matters most. But interventionists in our middle school, interventionists throughout our district would be a huge win for students, especially students who are bubble students. They're right on the edge. They're either on the edge of being able to learn the information, or they're on the edge of being lost and pushed aside. So our interventionists are key resources that we could use to support student learning.
Thanks.
Sure.
Thank you, Dr. Donut. Mr. August, Superintendent's report.
Thank you. Enrollment report is attached. Cyber Charter 246, KOLA 179, elementary. We are looking at 1,147 K through 3. We are looking at 542 in grades 4 and 5. I would note that we are up about 6 kindergarten students from when I updated my spreadsheet from the last enrollment report, but still lower than we typically are. Secondary school, middle school, 855 students, and our senior high, 1097 with 23 in out of district placements, for a grand total of 3,664 students. So we've edged off a little bit from that peak of 3,700, a little bit more. As I was going through updating my list, I was noticing that the numbers were dropping a little bit in certain grade levels. Donation list. We'd like to acknowledge receipt of the following donation. Christina Weaver and Darwin Kraus, monetary donation in memory of Kenneth Lee Alexander for use by the Shippensburg Area School District Athletic Department. The value of the donation is $50. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Consent agenda. Item 4A is the approval of minutes. The recommend approval of the minutes as presented and attached from the September 23rd, 2024 board meeting. 4B is the recommendation for approval of the following bill of payments, financial reports, tax report, budget reports, which are attached. 4C, policies for the second reading and approval. Those are 320, 321, 325, 812, 814, 822, and 823. 4D is the request to form a new activity, the Dance and Exercise Club. The Shippensburg Area Senior High School teachers Nicole Hostetler and Bonnie Moose are requesting to form a Dance and Exercise Club. 4E is the request to form a cornhole club. Aaron Powell is requesting to form a cornhole club at the high school for students to learn, compete, and play cornhole. 4F is the facility use agreement with the Shippensburg University Foundation. Administration recommends retro approval of the facility use agreement with Shippensburg University Foundation to hold interscholastic athletic games at the Robb Athletic Complex on September 30th. That cost is $400, and that will be being paid from the athletic department. 4G is the approval to participate in the federal programs for the 24-25 school year. 4H is the 2025 PSBA officer election. PSBA holds annual elections for members interested in holding leadership positions within PSBA. Member school districts in good standings may participate in the election of officers. PSBA is asking for the board members to include the voting of the 25 PSBA officers on an agenda for discussion followed by an action. And listed are the officers that have been selected by the Shippensburg Area School District Board of Directors. 4I is the personnel for professional and support, which includes a list of transfers, new appointments, and terminations and resignations. Is there a motion to approve items 4A through 4I?
Fred Scott, make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Scott, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Carey. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Action agenda, item 5A, the Hoffman Academy Addendum. Administration recommends approval of the attached Hoffman Homes, Inc. Addendum. Hoffman provides a therapeutic learning environment and educational services to children with and without special education requirements. The cost for the program services is $150 per instructional day while school is in session. Is there a motion to approve item 5A?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Donovan.
Second.
Second by Mr. Carey. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5B, the Read Live licenses. Administration recommends approval to purchase Read Live. This resource provides fluency practice for readers. The cost is $1,610 and will be split between the curriculum budget and the special education budget. Is there a motion to approve item 5B?
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Lyman, second by Mr. Carey. Discussion?
It's close.
Mr. Noggle, sorry.
That's okay.
Discussion?
We ride in the same truck.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5C is the Vision Insurance Renewal, the PSEA Health and Welfare Fund. Administration will recommend that the Board of Directors approve a 2-year agreement with the PSEA Health and Welfare Fund Vision Insurance through NVA presented as follows. Single is $2.27 and family it's $7.48. Is there a motion to approve item 5C?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Donovan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Carey. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5D is the local audit firm approval. Administration recommends continuing its longstanding partnership with Boyer and Ritter as its local audit firm due to its excellent service and reasonable pricing. The current contract expired for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024. Boyer and Ritter has provided the district with several options as outlined in the attached proposal. Administration recommends the board approve the 5-year proposal as follows. Is there a motion to approve item 5D?
Fred Scott, make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Scott, second by Mr. Carey. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5E is the Hurley's online auction service. Administration recommends approval to use Hurley online auction to sell unwanted and unused materials and products of the Shippensburg Area School District. Is there a motion to approve item 5E?
So moved.
Scott, make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Scott, second by Dr. Lyman. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5F is the Manufacturers Association Pre-Apprenticeship Program. Administration recommends approval of the pre-apprenticeship program with the Manufacturers Association. Upon completing of training, 64 hours of technical training can be articulated to a state-registered employer-sponsored apprenticeship program in manufacturing. Students also earn their OSHA 10 safety card. Is there a motion to approve item 5F?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Noggle, second by Dr. Lyman. Discussion?
Yeah, this seems like a good news item. Does this happen? I just want to know more about it.
Me too. I was curious how many are in it, or
So it's brand new. We're getting off
the high school, or
yeah, we'll be having it at the high school. Mrs. Akers will be like running it. It's just another opportunity for our kids to get technical training while they're in high school. So it is a good thing.
Okay.
It's a great opportunity. And
it looked like it's sort of in addition to classes, from what I read in the proposal. And anyway,
I mean, some sort of hybrid situation. I'm assuming.
It looked like a good thing.
Okay. Yeah, you are correct, sir.
I'm getting a nod from the high school principal. So.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 5G is the James Bird roof replacement bid. Administration recommends approval to advertise and receive bids to replace the roof at James Bird Elementary. Is there a motion to approve item 5G?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Carey.
Second.
Second by Mr. Noggle. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? At the July 8th Planning and Action Meeting, the Board of School Directors approved the creation and advertisement of an invitation to bid to replace the dishwasher at the middle school and high school. The district received 2 bids. Below is a summary of the bids. Administration recommends awarding the bid to Culinary Depot, the lowest bidder for the base bid at the middle school in the amount of $46,541.79, and the alternate bid at the high school in the amount of $51,569.89, for a total of $98,111.68. The cost of the project will be paid from the Food Service Fund. Is there a motion to approve item 5H?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Carey.
Second.
Second by Mr. Scott. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5I is the additional speakers for the stadium. Administration through the Facilities Committee recommends the approval of a change order to allow the addition of speakers around the press box to mitigate sound variations due to the placement of the larger speaker pole at the new stadium. Is there a motion to approve item 5I?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Carey, second.
Prescott seconds.
Second by Dr. Lyman. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The base bid, item 5J, is the high school, middle school parent loop bid acceptance. The base bid for the project, which includes additional music classroom space, the family consumer science classroom spaces, a STEM classroom, conference rooms, a rear entrance to the building, a cafe concession stand in the lobby, and modifications to the front entrance is $4,599,938. Is there a motion to approve item 5J?
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Lyman.
Just to be clear, Dr. Lyman, are you motioning for the approval of the bid and all the alternates?
Well,
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't.
I don't know.
pay.
I assume we were going to discuss that during the discussion part, but.
But, I mean,
Let me read the back. So alternate 1 is for the construction of the middle school music addition, noted site work and work related to modifications of the existing middle school building office space at a cost of $902,392. Alternate 2 is to add the middle school parent loop at a cost of $1,252,110. The district has received a grant in the amount of $450,000 to be used towards that parent loop. And then alternate 3A is the outside lights regarding upgrade upgrades at the middle school at the cost of $16,325, which will be covered by the PCCD grants, along with alternate 3B is the lights outside of the high school, which would also be covered with the grants. Alternate 5 is replace the high school electric panels at the cost of $43,150. Alternate 6 is replace the high school electrical panels and transformer at a cost of $39,480. And alternate number 7 is change rooftop air handling unit manufacturer at a cost of $14,000. The total cost for the base bid and the alternates are $6,888,735, and after subtracting the grants related to the project totaling $487,665, the actual cost is $6,401,070. Now, is there a motion to
Well, I mean, I think the base motion would be to approve all of them, and then if there's a motion to amend, we would have to consider that.
I'll do the whole kit and caboodle motion.
So you're gonna, for the base bid? Okay, so
That's the alternates, yeah. Just so we can talk.
you wanted to do it, just the,
So, I mean, I think we either vote, so we vote on the whole package, or someone makes a motion to amend, maybe after a discussion, what configuration makes the most sense to individuals.
so is there a second?
I will second the motion,
Second by Dr.
which
Goat.
I understood to be the entire project. So the base bid plus all of the alternates.
Discussion.
The thousands and small amounts don't bother me, but I'm having trouble with that loop and the $4,500,000. I'm make perfect sure I'm afraid. You tell me you got a $3 million deficit. I don't know what the future looks like, and I don't want to spend out money and then have to lay teachers off. So if somebody can explain to me and give me support that won't happen, I'll go for it. Other than that, I can't. Not right now. Right now, if someone shows me this stuff, and then I'll probably go with it. But right now, I can't.
I would like to make a motion to table it, but I'm not sure when the proper time to do that is.
So a motion to table, I think, supersedes. And there is no discussion on a motion to table.
So there's a motion to table item 5J. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Carey. Roll call, please.
This, just to be clear, we're voting on tabling this agenda item, not for approval.
Do we need to set a date that we're tabling it till, or is it going to be just continuous on to the next agenda?
So we would have to vote to take it off the table at the next meeting. If that's not done, then it comes off the agenda, and would have to be reintroduced if that.
Is there more information you're looking for to put it back on the next meeting?
So it sounds, I don't want to put words in your
Go
mouth,
ahead.
but it sounds like you're, yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm not doing Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay.
But if you would be willing to sort of hold off on the table motion until we've had a little discussion, and then if you want to table till later, because then I think that would clear up some of what people are kind of.
Okay, that would be fine. I'm trying to delay it so that we get more clarity on the elementary schools, however we do this.
Would you be willing to withdraw
Withdraw
your?
that for the time being to allow discussion.
Thank you. If you wanted to share why the motion or what information you're looking for to make you more comfortable.
Well, I believe we need to define what we're going to do in elementary before we pull the trigger on a lot of this. And the other thing that on the parent loop, I'd like to see if we can get definition from the traffic study, because if we're going to invest in parking, you know, the parent loop actually has parking out front. Does it make sense to maybe look at some of the parking out back that might fit within whatever the borough may need, if they need anything? So, but mainly it's just a financial stoppage, because I don't know that we're clear on where we need to go elementary wise.
So from my understanding, these two aren't necessarily like married together with projects, as they're coming from different. So voting for one is not voting for not doing anything at the elementary schools.
No, but the idea, my concern is, do we have the funds to do that? Because if we pull the trigger on one of those options, which option is chosen, then will we have funding left for lights, for additional parking? We have teacher negotiations coming up next year. Just exactly where are we at with fund balance too. So that's why I had asked to have a budget and finance committee and try to get some clarification on this in the past.
I appreciate the trepidation from both Mr. Scott and Mr. Noggle. We can't predict the future, and it's very difficult for us to raise funds with the very limited strings that we're able to pull to raise funds. I'm kind of wondering what postponement would do from a construction point of view, and I wonder if that could be answered.
So your bids are only good for 60 days from bid date, which was September 19th. So if you go past that, the bids will become voided, and you'll have to rebid the whole process again.
So that would be November 19th-ish?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the first thing that you need to get, decide what you guys want to do. But I'm here to answer any other questions that you guys have. I know you guys are in a very difficult spot. I know you guys have been discussing this for a long time. The prices are extremely good. I will tell you that we are still seeing projects come in high. I just had one in Pittsburgh come in high. Adam just had one out here come in higher than anticipated. So, but again, I know you guys are looking at your elementary school, so if there's any other questions I can answer for you, let me know.
Explain that again. You said you had bids coming in high?
Yeah, we've had other projects that have come in above the budgets recently.
So we got lucky with our.
You got very lucky. You got very good pricing. Another thing is, if you do not start construction, you will not get in August of 2025. That will be delayed.
But is there a rush for us to accomplish this?
That would be the district's choice. I don't know how you do your courses and when you're going to open those courses to your students, but they would not be probably ready until December of 2025, given the year that we're starting at this time.
Mr. August, can you share how much we have sunk to get to this point?
I was hoping Rochelle had that number. We had talked about that.
It's like 1.7.
Sure, but it's about 1.3 million has been spent on architectural fees, construction management fees, borough fees, reimbursables, and then your additional expenses from the site-related items for the parent loop and doing the land development and all of those permittings.
And the current, you mentioned August, that is the proposed or the anticipated finish date, August 2025?
Yes, that is the anticipated completion date, so you guys can start your new school year in the spaces. It's even, right now, we are hoping to have this awarded a little sooner, but we can still hit the ground running. The contractors are ready to go if the districts decide to, but right now we're coming up against the time frame to have it completed for August and be out of your hair for the start of school.
And so a delay would push us into later than August, potentially
Yes.
into September.
Correct. And depending on when you start, it could even be later. So, the later I start foundations, right now, a delay another month could delay the end result 2 months just because of starting foundations in the middle of winter.
What was our original expected budget on this? Like $9 million?
It was actually 10 million. Tried to bring everything possible for all the questions. The estimate was $10,354,000 originally for all the items.
So as a group, we went this far into this project thinking we could be okay with that number. Committed $1.3 million in all the fees and everything already, and now we're not sure. I guess I'm just asking, because it seems like a giant waste of $1.3 million.
What we pay for is
We're
still
not
ours.
throwing the plans away.
But our bids expire November 19th, right? So we may not get as favorable bids the second time around, which means seems awful
We
dangerous.
better
to me.
figure out how to explain some of our budget on elementary.
So with that, just looking up our last finance report from the 23rd, actual ending of fund balance, according to this, 6/30/24, 17 million? Is that right?
Estimated to be at 12.
Estimated at 12, but we also were estimated to have like a $6 million deficit when we started last year at this time. And that number went down because there was, as almost every other district throughout the state, extra money was given from the governor's budget, which we have to play a guessing game on. I don't know. This seems like a really fair number to me compared to what we were, at least what I thought, willing to spend of like 10 million. You're getting this at whatever it is, 6.5 or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I was in favor of the entire project. Yeah.
I'm in favor of the entire project as well, and I want to express that I really do understand this, our financial situation, but I also feel like delay puts us in a really bad spot.
So if I could just remind us of some facts, and if anyone has needs to correct some of these facts, like please do. I mean, Levi remembers everything, so I'm relying on Levi, but also administration, please, Joanne, et cetera. So back in 2018, 6 years ago, like when we sort of begun this whole project, our business manager at the time said, like, look, here's what we're spending on our debt right now. Like, and we have, and so we sort of like started with the assumption that was our debt service level, right? I mean, it's like you got $500 a month budgeted to buy a car, right? But we paid off a lot of debt in at that time, refinanced some things, whatever. And so we've kept that line item, like this is our debt service amount, right? So with that debt service amount, we have a certain borrowing capacity. Now that debt service amount has stayed level, I mean, for much longer than 6 years. And if you consider that the overall budget of the school district has risen like just so much, right? I mean, I don't have the percentage, but I think like when I started on the board like 6 years ago, I mean, it's gone up like 15 million since then at least, right? But we've still kept that line item the same. So relative to our overall budget, we are saying like we are willing to borrow far, far less. Another way to put that is we are, even at the most like aggressive borrowing, we are so much more conservative than we have been 10 or 20 years ago. So that's just one thing to put into context. Second thing, and help me out with some of these numbers, right? We've been talking about the high school project and the middle school loop forever, for several years. And we've narrowed it down. Like we've kept whittling it away, thinking about like what are our real sort of priorities, right? And we've whittled away like, you know, tens of millions of dollars and got it down to, I think, like the bare minimum of things that are sort of necessary. Now, part of that we already started with the asset protection kind of stuff. And then we put out for bid, and the bids came in much lower than expected. And so, help me out with this. Mr. August, but I believe that that debt service level, that sort of maximum amount that we could borrow, even with this, we're still $9 million under that.
That's my understanding. Again, balanced budget being a factor in that borrowing.
Yeah. So 9 million. So it's like, you know, way back when we decided, hey, we could borrow this amount of money, and even with this project, we're $9 million under that, which is just so much better than what we thought it was going to be a year ago and 2 years ago when we, you know, first introduced the like ship taking shape program. We have so much more money potentially to borrow in a very conservative like budgeting strategy to fund elementary school construction than we thought we were going to have 2 years ago. And to add to that, I mean, let's look at this parent loop, right? I mean, this is coming in at $1.25 million. We expected several years ago to be paying, I think, twice that, right? And everybody was really upset that it didn't get finished. And it looks like this is a little bit of a blessing, because now, I mean, we were super nervous and we were frustrated, and I remember hearing a lot of frustration that's like, hey, why are we waiting? Interest rates are going up, the cost of oil, you know, all this stuff is going up, and it all came back down, right? So it's like we're sort of really fortunate that we didn't pull the trigger back then, because now we've got lower interest rates, we got lower cost of materials, and we've got way better bids than we would have had. So it's like, man, I'm looking at this, and compared to what we were voting on, whatever, 2 years ago or something, this just looks like a bargain, and really sort of hard to sort of balk at it, unless for some reason you think that the middle school loop is not needed, or it's the wrong middle school loop, in which case, like, I think those are legitimate concerns. But I mean, it might not be well, anyway, I think we all agree something needs to be done at the middle school, and this is what our engineers are proposing will solve those problems. And I mean, and then, you know, and we've got a grant in there too, so the total cost is only $800,000 for this middle school loop. I mean, compared to the numbers we were looking at 2 or 3 years ago, like this is a bargain. And I'm excited about solving that problem that has been just a problem for, you know, decades at the middle school for this cost. So I'm seeing all of this, and I'm ecstatic that, you know, these bids have come in lower. I mean, they came in lower for our athletic facilities, much lower than expected. Well, okay, one more fact, sorry, and then I'll stop. But let's consider like what the actual cost of borrowing is, right? So the cost of borrowing about $10 million at current interest rates, and help me out if I'm wrong, but I believe we're under $300,000 a year for a 20-year loan. And some of these loans are 25 and some of them are 20, and I don't really understand those bonds. So if it's a 25-year bond, then it would even be less, but a 20-year bond, we're looking at, you know, under $300,000. So that's the line item that we're looking at, right? I mean, the line item isn't $6 million. The line item is, you know, $200,000 or something a year for the length of the bond. I don't know. I'm just really excited about solving these problems. They need to be solved. These issues need to be addressed, and these look like bargain prices for addressing those issues compared to the prices that we've been looking at for the past several years.
Rochelle, could you talk a little bit about what we talked about on Friday regarding the first borrow and us not being able to do the loop then because of that? And could you kind of just walk the board through that?
Sure. So I wasn't here for the borrowing. However, I've heard a lot about not knowing that the project was over budget and all that stuff. So actually with the middle school, it came in over budget based on, you know, the numbers. The parent loop at that time came in at like $3 million. So you guys, from my understanding, decided not to move forward any further with the parent loop. So you did borrow some money that was to be for the parent loop to do the middle school project. But with the numbers that came in now for the middle school loop, you can do the loop under your 2022 borrowing with the money that was left over, the interest that was earned from the 2022 borrowing, and this grant. So you're back to getting the middle school loop and the middle school for what you would have gotten it for under your 2022 borrowing to begin with.
Wow, I just
So
want to
you're
like
becoming
highlight
whole.
that in yellow highlighter color and bold it and underline it. Like that is, I mean, that's the comment of the evening right there.
Wonder if the budget, we need more money than we have. What are we gonna do then? Yeah, you assume it's gonna be 3, but you can't give me no guarantee. It could be 5 million, right?
Fred, I think we're being as prudent as we can. I think every district in Pennsylvania is in the same boat.
That's exactly.
And I wish I could tell you here's plan A for that.
I understand that.
But it's about controlling costs. It's about meeting our needs. It's about keeping our class sizes low. But at the end of the day, like, teachers need space to teach in, and so, I wish I could give you more assurances. We have to look at this budget season and how we end this year and what our budget looks like for the next.
The fund balance lines, Joanne. The fund balance lines are obligated, right? Except 1.2 million.
Yes, and
We can move the money anywhere we want, but it's obligated.
Right. And with what Dr. Goetz was saying, this is all about prioritizing things. Like, he is speaking about one line item in a very large budget. There were, we've been able to not dip into fund balance because of a conservative budgeting. We weren't putting 100% of what the governor was proposing. It was more like 40%, and then if we'd end up getting 55 or 65%, of course that was in excess of how we did our budget. So that meant if the other items fell in line and didn't go over, that yes, at the end of the year we didn't have to dip in and take as much out of fund balance to finish the year. But since I've been here, we've never anticipated pulling, well, it was 3.7, and now with the adequacy money through the Ready to Learn, it's at 2.2 for reoccurring expenses out of one budget. I mean, we were anticipating having to pull as much as 3.7 when we weren't sure what we were going to get with adequacy money. The state is saying the adequacy money will be distributed over the next 7 to 9 years. PASBO is saying that the state's in the same boat as school districts, and that their savings account is getting depleted with giving this money out to, and everybody would like to be guaranteed that money over that time frame, but PASBO's saying not to guarantee that. Nobody has a crystal ball. What if the elections continue to change things and where the funding goes? There's so many moving parts to that. Like healthcare increased 16% in 1 year. That really hit the budget a lot. Outside cyber charter school costs really went up. They were some of the big items that really hit our budget for 24-25. It's way too early to guess what they're going to be for 25-26. There's so many moving parts to this to consider. Like, I know Mrs. Lentz projected putting about 600,000 back into fund balance from last year, which meant instead of dipping in to cover a deficit, we actually put over. That was because of the conservative budgeting. We got additional revenues and our expenses stayed less than what we were projecting. But if we were at full borrowing capacity, if we would have proceeded on with the projects, we would have been at a deficit. We would not have been putting money into our fund balance at the end of 24-25. We would have been taking money out of it. So there's a lot to consider, a lot of needs, a lot of priorities.
One thing that you didn't mention was that we absorbed like 8.5 positions that some people sitting here and past administrations thought it was a good idea to take one-time money and pay for full-time positions, which we knew was expiring. And we just absorbed 8.5 positions into that, which is a massive, massive hit, just like the rise in healthcare and everything else. So again, and Dr. Goetz brought up the level debt service. In the 2015-2016 school year, this school district's budget was $47 million. We've kept the same level debt service payments as far as I am aware. I believe that is right. Our budget now is $71 million. So we've added a substantially higher amount of money to our budget, but have not added a substantially higher percentage to what we're willing to spend on the buildings and infrastructures to house our students and teachers. And Fred, I know you said a couple times about wanting to lose teachers. I would be absolutely stunned if that ever came up as an idea, that we would cut teachers because we're seeing an increased enrollment. We're trying to solve solutions to get more teachers hired in more space. So
But didn't we just, when didn't we just lay off teachers or cut back on staff before you got here?
We did not lay off any,
Before you got here.
I mean like 08?
Yeah, it's about that we had to let teachers and people go.
I wasn't here for that. I know a lot of districts.
I'm just saying, it's a possibility. It is not off the realm that we won't have to. I'm just afraid. If the budget committee they're talking about was to review everything with the superintendent, with the plan, and came back and said, this is what we got. This is what you're going to have to take out. So if I got $100,000, I know if I spend 20,000, I got 80,000. I got 25,000. I got this. The simple route. To me, it's just. And I'm not against these things. I'm just afraid of the future.
So, Mr. Scott, would you be willing to? I mean, the original to maybe remove some of the alternates to make you feel more comfortable to move through with the educational space, because I also see on there a rear entrance to the building, which is something that you've been asking for a long time, and I would hate to see a no vote also mean that, some of our goals that we've set for ourselves that we know to harden our schools and to help with safety.
Some of it, I'm just having trouble doing all of it. That's all. But I still would like to go over the finances, so I know a better idea of what we're going to have at the end of when it comes budget time. Because last year it was 3 something, then it's down to 2 something. I just not comfortable.
I wonder if we could separate this need to get the money, or to figure out what we have to spend on the elementary schools from approval of this project. I know they're related, but in the interest of moving this project forward and not having it happening in September and kind of messing up our students in their schools and not losing $1.3 million and not losing our bids, if we could sort of move towards approving whatever version we want of this, and then separately talk about and take seriously Mr. Nagel's idea of really looking at what we have to spend on the elementary schools and figuring out what those numbers are and how we can save some money, how we can spend our money more wisely, and just kind of separate them.
To be honest with you guys, I'd like to have all this too, and the prices are really good. I just want to make sure we take care of elementary. If we can figure out how that's done, that's all I need.
I think everyone here is committed to addressing the elementary schools, but also knowing one project at a time. For so long, we keep getting ahead of ourselves. We're doing one, and then we're like, oh, well, what about this project? But at one point, I mean, we all agreed, and we've dipped 1.2, 1.3 million to make this happen. One project at a time. Our high school students and middle school students also deserve the same equity in education when it comes to space, especially when family consumer science. That room is original and it has its own concerns. By saying no, it's postponing that, which impacts every single student in Shippensburg area school district. They all go through that class. And one of our goals, a strategic plan that is in place, is looking into our cyber charter school enrollment, investing into Kaola, investing into special education online to bring some of those students back.
And that would be good for revenues.
If we are successful in that, and good vibes, I hope we are, they're going to come back to this building and to the middle school where those enrollments are the highest, and then where are they going to go? One project at a time, blinders on, like take it on, and then we will keep planning.
We don't need to do the elementary school. I just need a financial path. That's all I'm looking for.
Then I would propose that you make a motion with Mr. Donovan at the end of the meeting to create a budget and finance committee and to have a structure with a mission and vision to make that happen, because it seems to be some members are very passionate about wanting that. I'm not opposed. Have a mission and vision, make it happen, one project at a time.
And
I just want to add one more thing. I know, talked about this a lot, but 2 years ago when Taking Shape was first presented to us, I think it was like in November or December of, 22, we were estimating about $3 million would be left over to put, I think about $3 million, put aside for the elementary school projects. And if you would have told us at that meeting that like we would actually have 3 times that amount, like I think we all would have been over the moon. So I don't know. I mean, we have cut back and cut back. I think we've been really responsible and really conservative. And I don't know. Just say
How much money will we have left over, Nathan?
Sorry, what?
Dr. Goetz. How much money will we have left over for elementaries?
Well, I mean, if we keep debt service level, we'll have, it sounds like $9 million borrowing capacity for the elementaries. Yeah.
Okay. Will we be able to do the lights, parking if we need it?
I mean,
I'm just asking.
You'd weigh those things against the other stuff.
Mrs. Dunette wants interventionalists.
When you say lights, you're talking about like athletic stadium lights?
Yeah.
I think as one of the line item budget items is the flagship Proud, which I know that we've heard that we should use cash last in this whole thing. But prior board set back like $1.7 million to go toward that project, and that money hasn't been touched in this project. That's been all stuff that's been.
No, I know it hasn't been touched in this
So
project.
I look at that theoretically and say, cash at the end. That seems like cash that's available once we get to that point.
I think, and this might not be the time to say this, especially if Mr. Noggle's going to make a motion at the end of the meeting, but and I'm not sure that budget and finance is the right label for the committee. From my conversations, and I think what we're looking at is just, it's like an investigation or a brainstorming kind of thing about how we can spend our money more efficiently, and it may mean spending money to save money. It may mean not spending money to save money. It's just looking at creative solutions to meet the needs of our students, and at the same time being as fiscally responsible as we can so that we can get the most bang for our buck for our elementary schools and whatever remaining projects are out there. Because I hesitate to, I think we all enjoy being fully informed about the budget process, and I think it should be clear that this is not part of the budget process, and it is just investigation, education, just to sort of, and brainstorming, coming up with ideas with the smart people at the district. Some of us are smart on the board, maybe all of us are smart on the board, and just trying to come up with ideas.
For me, when we first started this, I asked, if we go out to bids, are there things we can take out if we want to? Every board member that time I came up and asked that specific because of this situation. I want to know what I could do and what I couldn't do. I'm not against it. I just.
Mr. Scott, we did take stuff out.
What?
We took a lot of projects.
Before the bid, and we sent it out for bid. I said, if bids come back, can we still take stuff out?
We did, and this is what we ended up with. There was a whole long other list.
Is this stuff we sent to bid?
And there.
Fred, if you remember the process, I came to you with a lean base bid. It was I was surprised that, given the opportunity, more wasn't added into it. The board approved that lean bid. You know, for us to pull out a la carte items to bid, they can't all be alternates, correct?
Correct, and we talked about that, and you did that at first, and then we even broke it down further. We broke down the high school chunk, the middle school chunk, and the parent loop chunk. That is what you're seeing in these alternates. You know, alternates number 5, 6, and 7, you guys do not have to do. They were just put on there because the electrical panels will give you more capacity in the future. You do not have to do it. You do not have to change the manufacturer of the rooftop units. So that's almost $100,000 you do not have to do in this scenario that you can save and still do all your educational spaces. So, but we did break it down as much as we could to be economical, feasible for the districts to get their bid. If you broke it down into so many things, the contractors would just put in extra money because they're never going to know what you're going to pick. And so their management number would have to go somewhere, and they're going to put it everywhere because they're not going to know if you're going to pick one thing or 10 things, and they're going to need management. So that's why we couldn't break it down any more than what we broke it down. This was your best case to get the best bid for the district.
And I would just make an observation that, you know, if this project doesn't go through, and depending on what in that matrix you saw during the committee of the whole, whatever option you pick, we're going to have the same discussion because we will be going to the debt service limit likely, you know, with that construction piece, if that makes sense. You know, so if we forego this and then we choose to do everything at SACE to the max, we're still going to be going to our debt service. So, like, it's just, do we want to look at the entire system and get space across the board, or do we want to do nothing and not address facilities at all, or do we want to put all of our or most of our resources at the elementary level? You know, so I think there's a good chance that we will be back in a similar meeting trying to decide whether or not we should go to our debt service limit.
The only part that confuses me some is, and I'm certainly not this is not my expertise, but you know, all my work that I've had in the prior, always have learned to trust the finance office. And back in January, we were told, specifically on one of our budget papers, we could afford the athletic stadium and the asset protection, the base package, and that was it. And we've already gone beyond that. Now, do we have the money for that? I don't know. I'm taught to trust the finance office. That's not my area of expertise. So we've already gone against that. That's just food for thought. You keep saying, you know, let's finish something. Well, I think the whole point is we'd like to finish something, but we need to know how much we need to spend ahead. Those two things do go together. I mean, you can't just ignore one and say, well, we'll spend this, and then how much do we have to spend at the next one? Does it matter how much we spend here as to how much we get in the next round? I'm not sure. Does it?
So, I mean, obviously,
we can spend
you know, if the board chooses not to do alternate 1 and alternate 2, that's $2 million off this project. So that's $2 million that could be put towards the elementaries. Now, I'm not recommending that. I'm just saying, like, it is some kind of toggle between what are we going to do for the high school and what are we going to do for the elementary. Or we do nothing and just lower our debt, so, you know, keep it the same and use that money, you know, to continue to, you know, either cover deficits or grow our fund balance.
But 1 and 2 could be done later, correct? We could.
No, I mean, yeah, we'd have to rebid them.
I mean,
and we would
not get these prices now.
And we would not get the grant, probably.
We'd be flushing $450,000 down the toilet.
There may be a window if we did it fast enough. I think there is a amount of time that can be spent. 3 years. So we would have to do that project in 3 years, Fred.
Yeah, but it can be done within that time for 3 years.
We would have to
But
rebid it.
it will only get more expensive.
And we would lose the 1
That's
point.
what I was told it's going to be more expensive when we started this, and now it's not. It's not,
They redesigned, I mean, from your original parent loop to your new parent loop.
not just a
It was
parent,
redesigned.
but the whole ball of wax. I kept being told that you got to do it now or the bid's going to go up. Correct? And then when it comes down, the bids are lower. So that's just a guess on your part, correct?
That is our professional opinion of what we've seen in the
Has
past.
been proven wrong in the past. So, well,
All right.
I think it's time to call the question.
I'm going to make a motion to table. I will revisit at the next board meeting.
I'll second that.
There's a motion made by Mr. Noggle to table this until the next board meeting. Second by Mr. Donovan. Roll call.
Mr. Carey,
Just to be clear, if you vote yes, you're voting to table this, okay?
but we can bring it up next month, right?
Next meeting.
Next meeting, we can bring it up.
We would have to vote to take it off the table, Fred.
We can still bring it up.
And is,
The consequence of that is if it is ultimately approved, there could be a chance that it's not ready for school, which will be a gigantic headache for everyone that goes to school in this building.
Yes.
Mr. Kressler,
No.
Dr. Goetz,
No.
Dr. Lyman,
no.
Mr. Noggle,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Donovan,
Yes.
Mrs. Everly.
No.
It's a 4-4 vote.
Motion should fail.
Yeah.
So the motion to table has failed.
So I'd like to call the question on the original motion then, please.
Roll call, please.
So to clarify,
Please.
this is the motion to do the base bid and all 7 alternates.
As presented. I'm sorry, the original motion, who made that?
Dr. Lyman.
And then who was the second?
Dr. Goetz.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kressler,
Yes.
Dr. Goetz,
Yes.
Dr. Lyman,
Yes.
Mr. Noggle,
That was for the whole package, right? Everything? No.
Mr. Scott,
No.
Mr. Carey,
No.
Mr. Donovan,
No.
Mrs. Everly.
Yes.
Motion failed 4-4.
So now, can we attack this one with the base bid and then each alternate as we go?
So I believe a motion could be made to take some combination, I believe.
This is going to create a whole lot of work for Joanne trying to keep track of all this. In that case, then, can I make the motion that we take an individual vote on each item, starting with the base bid and then all 7 alternates, one by one?
Could I offer an alternative?
Yeah, you sure can.
I really don't like the optics of saying no to free money. And it looks to me like options 1 or alternates 1, 2, 3A, and 3B all involve us funding projects with grants that people have offered to give us money to. It's free money.
With the exception of alternate 1. We
Right.
don't have grant money with that.
2, 3, and 2, 3A, and 3B all involve grants that we worked hard with. That our local elected officials came and visited us and offered us the funds. If we maybe, and Levi, you can, or Mr. Kressler, you can shut me down if you want to, but if we could do alternates, the base bid plus alternate 1, 2, 3A, and 3B, and maybe vote on that. I think it's.
So alternate 1 didn't have any.
Right. So I'm saying take alternate 1, 2, 3, and 3A and 3B.
but alternate 1 didn't have any grant money.
Right. So
But you still want
I want that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That being said, I think it's a little silly because we're then letting go of projects that don't really cost very much money that are alternates 5, 6, and 7, but a little bit. If that can help us get
Levi, just
the rest of it.
you want to make.
Perfect. So I'm fine with that. So that would be, again, on the track, making the motion that we vote on the base bid plus 1, 2, 3A and 3B.
Yes.
Okay.
So Mr. Kressler has made a motion to approve the base bid to include alternate 1, 2, 3A, and 3B. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Lyman. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Dr. Goetz,
Yes.
Dr. Lyman,
Yes.
Mr. Noggle,
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
So it's the base bid 4, 5.
Base bid 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, 3A, and 3B, Fred.
So it's knocking off
5 and down.
7.
Knocking off 5, 6, and 7.
7.
That's chump money. So I mean that's 43,000. And we could pay that out of our fund balance.
Oh.
No.
Mr. Carey,
No.
Mr. Kressler,
Yes.
Mr. Donovan,
No.
Mrs. Everly.
Yes.
Motion passed, 5 yes, 3 no's.
Thank you. Item 5K, the Shippensburg area school.
I'm sorry, before we move on, could I make a motion to approve alternate number 5?
I second that.
So a motion was made by Dr. Goetz to approve alternate 5, second by Mr. Scott.
Okay.
Discussion.
Yes. So I need some clarification about the difference between 5 and 6 because they both say high school electrical panels. Is there?
I think
What's a
they're two.
transformer?
Go ahead.
They're just in 2 different locations.
Okay. so
Number
it's
5 is
different
by
panels in different
mechanical room,
locations.
and number 6 is a different area within your building.
Okay, so in order to get the benefits that you mentioned earlier of sort of better electrical
Or
options,
capacity in the future to expand if you needed to.
we need both in order to do that.
They're both on different parts of your building. I would recommend because of the price.
Yeah.
I think it's a great thing to do. That way it gives your building, like, again, more capacity if you ever want to add sound system, lights, more power, more data, whatever it is. It's worth it.
So, sorry to complicate things, Dr. Goetz, but those two seem tied together. Are we willing to take both of those?
I am if my second team is also
What are we talking about?
So there's 2 alternates that involve high school electrical panels. Instead of
6
just
is-
taking one, we're taking both of them.
6 and 7, you talking about?
Yeah. No,
5 and 6.
5 and 6.
Chump money. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I revise my motion to approve alternate 5 and 6.
So there's a motion by Dr. Goetz to approve alternate 5 and 6, seconded by Dr. Lyman. Roll call, please.
I think Mr. Scott was the
Mr.
Scott, I'm sorry.
What?
You second that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Lyman,
Yes.
Mr. Noggle,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Carey,
No.
Kressler,
Yes.
Dr. Goetz,
Yes.
Mr. Donovan,
No.
Mrs. Everly.
Yes.
And now I'd like to make a motion to approve alternate number 7.
So just
Yes.
just to solidify, that's 6 to 2
6
passed.
to 2, yeah, it passed. So you want to do 5J alternate 7?
What we just do?
Second.
Wait, hang. What is the motion? I'm
So
sorry.
the motion is now to approve alternate number 7. Dr. Goetz made a motion, second by Dr. Lyman.
Alternate just 7.
Number 7. Roll call, discussion.
Are we taking this out of bond, I mean, out of bail, I mean, out of their borrow? We taking this money out of the borrow?
Yes.
Why can't we take it out of fund balance? Why we got to take this money out of borrowing?
Because we spend the cash last, and this is already within the scope of the borrow.
If we save money in a bond, we can use that to something else, correct? I mean, we only talking about maybe 100,000? No, maybe not even 100,000. Those 3, 5, 6, and 7. Why, I don't see why we're putting that on a bond when we can use it for something else, when we can take it out of fund balance.
So, I mean, to your point, Mr. Scott, I mean, it is $14,000. You know, we could take it out of that. It just brings down our available capital.
We put it in a bond, we got to pay more on that. That 14,000 going to affect the bond, isn't it?
That is correct.
So it's 1/2. To me, that's bonds for big chunks. These are little chunks, and that's what I thought fund balance was for. But maybe I'm wrong.
Roll call.
Mr. Noggle,
You bet.
Mr. Scott,
Yeah.
Mr. Carey,
No.
Mr. Kressler,
Yes.
Dr. Goetz,
Yes.
Dr. Lyman,
Yes.
Mr. Donovan,
No.
Mrs. Everly.
Yes.
6 yes, 2 no. Motion passed.
All right. 5K, the Shippensburg Area School District Bollards Project. Administration recommends advertising for RFPs to install traffic safety bollards at James Byrd, Nancy Grayson, the middle school and high school. The project will be paid for using PCCD grant money from the 23-24 grant award. Is there a motion to approve item 5K?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Carey, second.
Second.
Second by Dr. Lyman. Discussion?
I love using the word bollards in board meetings.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I thought you were staying the whole meeting.
I was. I got a PSAT tomorrow. Boys got to go to bed.
Tell your mom sorry.
Discussion items. I'll just review the highlight. You can stop me with questions or feel free to email myself or Mr. August or anyone from administration with questions. Item 6A is disposal of the obsolete textbooks. 6B is the request to form a new activity, the Mythology Club. 6C is the request to form a new activity, the PBIS student team. 6D is the PBIS team social media. 6E is teamology at the middle school. 6F is the Yellow Breeches Educational Center. 6G is the Title I service contract for the CAIU. 6H is the CAIU Hilltop Academy agreement for the fiscal year of the 24-25. 6I is the approval to participate in IDEA grant programs for the 24-25 school year. 6J is the authorization for payment of November and December bills. 6K is the electricity contract. 6L is the approval of the 24-25 bus routes. 6M is the approval of the transportation van drivers for the school year. 6N is the G4 Security Solutions Agreement for the 25-26 and 27 school year, and those proposals are attached. And that concludes the discussion agenda, which now brings us to the citizens' comments regarding.
We're not going to discuss it. We're going to discuss it.
Oh, is it?
Did you have something you could stop me?
I want 6N. I want like 6N discussed.
Yeah, how about it?
All right. The boroughs here, I heard conflicting. What, Superintendent, can you tell us what the reasoning was that we're looking at going another police department? Can you please?
Sure. In June of this year, I received an email from Mayor Coy requesting a meeting with the district regarding the SRO program due to their staffing shortages. At that meeting, the borough, the police department indicated that they were struggling with manpower and that they were having difficulty covering every single day, all day, at the schools. And one of their solutions was to perhaps do the morning and dismissal and arrival times, and then be able to go on patrol. At that meeting, I informed them that we would have to go through the safety committee, and that the board was concerned and wanted to have a full-time presence in the buildings. So from that point, Mrs. DeLong and I began looking at different options that included some hybrid solutions, starting our own police force, and going with a contractor like G-Force. At the safety and security meeting, those options were presented, and the committee put forth a recommendation for G-Force. So I will say this, and I say this with Chief Young here, the borough and the police force, the SROs have bent over backwards to provide as much coverage as they can. A conversation that I had with Chief Young indicated that they were consistently giving 4 out of 5 days. But I do need to give a shout out to all the SROs for putting the district first and doing everything possible to have as much of a presence in the schools, and also a shout out to their performance in those roles has been outstanding.
But they couldn't provide an officer every day in the school.
So they've been fairly consistent through the school year so far. As I said, I think my conversation with Chief Young was 4 out of 5 days. I believe they were able to provide an officer every day, but I don't think it's every single day, according to that conversation.
So G-Force is going to be able to provide 3 officers, Mr. Long? 3 officers every day, and that'd be middle school, high school, and the elementaries. Can the borough provide that? Can the borough provide that? 3 officers, an officer in the middle school, and a junior high, and elementary every day.
I mean, I'll say something. So as we started this whole process 2.5, 3 years ago, in that safety committee, then I was the person who was absolutely set on partnering with the borough for many reasons, and I think that they proved why, because of the connection that the officers there had to the schools, whether it's Shippensburg graduates, kids, grandkids, and I think it was great. But just speaking for myself, like this summer when I was told, that it was that the district was approached and said that we're really looking at arrival and dismissal, and then about leaving to go on patrol, and whether or not that's happened or not, to me, that was not the intention of us starting an SRO program, was to have coverage beginning of the day, end of the day. And while I totally appreciate it, I just saw Chief Young at Nancy Grayson last week when I dropped my daughter off. It has nothing to do, in my opinion, with the people involved. I think that it's just about wanting to make sure, at least for me, that there was consistent coverage across our schools. And I said that at our safety meeting on July 15th when this kind of started to come to a head.
As you know, I've always proposed our own police department within the school district. I felt it was best to have that option available to us. G-Force, I still want that. I still want our own officers within our school to be resource officers. I think that's make a difference in the grouping of the people, the teachers and administrators and everything in a police officer.
Do we, on that note, what can I just get what's G-Force, give me the elevator pitch, I guess.
So G-Force is I think best described as a private security company, specializing in school safety officers, which is a little bit different from a school resource officer. One notable difference is the arrest powers is a big one.
They don't have them.
They do not. They're in a couple local districts, Gettysburg and
Not to interrupt you, but I think it's Gettysburg, Northern, I think Bermudian Springs.
They don't have Gettysburg.
I'm not saying, no, sorry, not Gettysburg.
Mrs. DeLong,
I got 8 of them. They have 8 of them, I think. 8 school districts.
Yeah, it's primarily Adams County.
Fairview, in Northern and Fairfield. They have down.
So local but not local.
Correct.
But they are looking at like local individuals to hire because they're actively hiring people.
So they would they could potentially hire someone who lives in Shippensburg.
This is, when we went through this process 2.5 years ago, that was one of the 3 options that G-Force presented an option to us then. So they were interested 2.5 years ago. They still, I guess, were interested, obviously.
And the job description is the same as it was with our SROs from.
So it would be a different contract, you know, similar responsibilities, you know.
And another thing, we're not competing. We're not the only police department. I mean, school districts trying to find these people. It's just a state law now that you have to have SROs or police officers in your school district. So we're competing against other schools for officers. So we have an agreement with the borough for 90 days out of the contract or something like that. Is that true?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Contract with the borough. If we want to get out, or don't we have to go?
It's 120 days.
We have to give them a process. So no matter what we do today, you still have to wait that contract out. From my understanding, unless we're going to do something else.
I mean, I look at these numbers and I think the borough could probably use $200,000. But if they can't, for those numbers, if they can't provide what we need, that's unfortunate.
So I don't understand why we need three bodies, I guess. And it seems like with those numbers, maybe we could get 2 bodies from borough police chief or borough police department, and that seems like I don't know. I mean, 2 years ago we were happy with 1 body, and since we couldn't quite have 1 full person, then this issue comes up, and I realize some people want more, but I don't know. It just kind of seems like a solution without a problem. And I think I know I would much rather have locally, sort of local, fully, like real police officers, rather than not having real police officers.
Yeah, I agree with you. I worked for Shippensburg Police Department for 17 years. They just don't have the officers. They got 6 men. They have trouble. They don't work at night during the weekends. They got called the state police and the cover patrols. They just don't have the manpower. So unless the borough's going to provide them with more manpower, I don't see how it can be done.
Is the 3 officers, is that part of the new state law?
So there's the requirement is to have 1 SRO or school
district.
Or district. Yeah, and there I believe there is some wiggle room, at least initially, that you just need to report that you don't have it. But the PCCD monies that we're receiving, I believe, are intended to assist districts in hiring SROs and SSOs.
So in some of my conversations just earlier today with folks on borough council and then folks here, it just seems like there's been some some wires crossed in communication, and this is just on the discussion agenda now. I guess I don't know if this is the safety committee's domain. I would just really like to see the safety committee engage in a sit down with the borough powers that be, the mayor, the police chief, whomever, see if our concerns can be addressed by their department, and if they can't, then okay, then maybe this is the best option. But I guess I would just like for that sit down to occur and really sort of go through this. And I mean, we've got representatives here. Are you all open to that? Does that seem like a proper course of action?
You're gonna hire more officers. Is the borough gonna hire more officers?
Yeah, please.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. So, also, thank you for your time. Good Lord, you guys put some hours in. G-Force's practice model, as I understand, is they target retired municipal officers, retired state troopers. So if you give them the contract and they've got 60, 90, 120 days, they're going out to recruit that type of candidate for this position. That's something we could do. We've not explored that. So, and Chief Young, and I'll let him tell you if you'd like to talk, Tommy, but Chief was kind of blindsided that we weren't asked to have a sit down. We were just asked, can you give us more people? Well, no, this is what we have. We have 4 out of 5 days right now. But that doesn't mean that we can't grow and go out and recruit some of these retirees like G-Force is going to do. And if we get someone that's relatively new out, they will have the Act 120 certification or state police that is not expired, and they would then have the true resource officer power to arrest and do everything that our SROs do. So I do like and I appreciate, Nathan, that I think it'd be wise just to sit down with us and see if we can accommodate.
You're here now. We're going through this here. Am I wrong, Superintendent? You were told they didn't have enough manpower, right? Or they didn't have enough man to fulfill a
Well, I think we were asked, can you put more in or whatever, and I think the answer was we have 4 out of 5 days. We were not asked, can you beef up your staff and can you recruit people? At least that's my understanding.
Well, I mean, I'm a little confused, because the mayor reached out to set up the meeting to say we don't have the manpower. My assumption was if you didn't have the manpower, then,
So I think it's a poor communication one way or the other, and I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just saying that there was not a sit down. When we met with the superintendent and the assistant superintendent in March to review the 1-year progress of the SRO program, everything was fine. And then 2 months later, I guess Mayor Coy sent that email.
Right. So the district did not initiate that.
Well,
Mr. Schwartz,
really
the borough initiated the conversation in regard to the shortfall.
This is the first time hearing that you wanted 3 bodies. I was not aware of that, and I know that we did not have time to react or consider or explore what are our options. So that's why I'm here tonight, just to let you know that we're open to sitting down. Whether it's one meeting, great. The borough's going to survive, our police department's going to survive with or without the SRO program. I'm not here to beg and try to save the SRO program. We don't make any money off you guys. We have one officer who's got grandchildren in the school district, and we've got 2 other officers who are SROs who have school children in the district, and we're just very vested. And that's all I just wanted to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I would concur that every SRO is vested in our district and is a huge asset and has gone way above and beyond in their roles.
Do we need a motion?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's on the discussion agenda. I guess, I think that board leadership could just direct the safety committee to sort of have this conversation, and we can go from there.
Excuse me. Chief Young, can you provide 2 men every day?
But I think part of the discussion would be like, can we be creative about meeting our needs?
How you gonna be creative? You need bodies. So can you provide the people? 2 people every day.
Currently, right now, no.
What about saying in the future?
We could possibly, yeah. I mean,
Then we can come to that. Then we can go back to you.
yeah.
That part.
Yes, that's correct.
Until the borough provides you more manpower, you're not able to do it. Correct?
Currently, no.
Okay. So if they change manpower, the borough gives them more manpower. We can always go back to the borough.
But Mr. Scott, we would need to commit. I mean, they're not going to recruit more officers until we commit to needing those officers.
Need more officers now.
They're going to have to.
The borough needs more officers. Period. Without the SRO program, like you said, They need more officers. They got 6 officers.
But did they know that we would throw extra resources? Because I'm going to lean to supporting the borough.
What resources? What are you gonna do? You gonna hire more men? You gonna hire?
I'm going to give them an opportunity to hire more men.
So,
You want discussion? Let's discuss.
well, I'd like to also keep some decorum here and have some.
May I say one more thing? A Monday through Friday, day shift job for the SRO, it's actually a very appealing opportunity for a retired police officer, whether it's a municipal police officer or state trooper. And that's where I'm saying we've not marketed and targeted to hire those people because we honestly didn't know there was an interest that we would be remunerated for that service. So that's all I'm saying.
So that
It's gonna take 120 days anyway, right? From my understanding, the contract.
So when approved, in order to right, there is that window of 120 days, which gets us mostly through this school year. Well, maybe not.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
Okay, we've had lots of discussions. I wasn't prepared to talk tonight or anything, but we've had lots of discussions about this, and I just don't even know how to explain it the correct way. But when we had the meeting over the summer, the reason for that meeting was for me to tell you ahead of time we are going to have holes in the coverage. That was all it meant. It didn't say 4 out of 5 days. The 5th day is me. I'm the 5th day. I have meetings. I have things that got to be done. Just like you guys all have special jobs, I got special jobs too. So whenever it's me as the SRO, and I got to go meet with a mayor from 1:30 to 2:30, or I might have to go to a chief's meeting. You understand what I mean by that? That's where the holes are. It's whenever I got to do SRO plus chief duties. That's where your holes are. It's not 4 out of 5 days. It really isn't. You can look at my logs. You know, this year in particular, I have only turned in the hours I spent in the school. I don't just put a blanket on it and charge you 8 or 9 hours for SRO that day. You know, I'm only charging you for what, or, you know, I'm only putting on what I spend in the school. That's what you're getting. So like when you look at the daily logs and you see that I'm here 2.5 hours a day, okay, that 2.5 hours might mean that I'm here an hour in the morning. I go to a meeting, I come back, I spend an hour at one of the elementaries or one of the other schools, and at the end of the day, it's 2.5 hours a day. But I'm in and out of all 5 of the schools that we're supposed to go to. You know, I'm trying to give you everything I got with what I got, and you know, I'd love to have 5 more officers. I'd take them tomorrow if I could, but all this stuff takes time, and it's a whole lot of paperwork
And communication.
and communication. So you know, the 4 out of 5 days, it just rubs me wrong every time. It's not 4 out of 5 days. There's holes in the 5th day, and that's my fault. And I bear that.
You're the chief. You gotta do other things.
I have other things to do.
Being the chief being the SRO officer is not realistic.
It's not. You're right.
Be both.
There's a lot of things I can't do.
We can hire. We can pay for more police officers in Shippensburg Borough School District if that's what you want. But realistically, I know what Tommy's going through. And I know the probability of him getting hiring officers for Shippensburg Borough Police Department with the economics and everything is almost impossible.
So just to maybe put a bow on this, you know, there were 3 options available at the safety community. One was a hybrid, you know, with an individual that we may have had some discussions around who might be able to step in and be a full-time SRO. And then, you know, that same individual perhaps being hired by us directly. You know, so there were 2 other options on the table for the committee to consider. You know, and this is the one that came forward. So, you know, Tommy, I think, you know, those, you know, certainly I respect that you are putting so much time in to us and are vested. You know, if the full board is saying we want to relook at those options or rediscuss those options, I mean, that's something we can look at. You know, someone can vote to table this next week. We just have to do right by G-Force and communicate with them, because we've already communicated, our desire or the recommendation out of that committee. So, if the full board has doubts, then we could circle back and have those further discussions.
When did the borough's contract actually run out? Did we contract them from year to year, or it was just kind of like a
March of 25.
20, yeah.
Is that
March of 25.
March of 25?
I'm not sure if it's the beginning or the end, but
So we still have to stay with them till March.
There is an exit clause that it'd probably be right around
it's
the same.
120 days, which is basically where we are.
See you, man.
Okay.
So if you decide, whatever you decide, it's still going to be March of 25.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody for coming. That was helpful.
Any other citizens' comments?
I did want to say
Thank you.
back to, lost my page now on that discussion. The one gentleman mentioned the teamology at the beginning of the meeting there. Just want to make a note that is covered by the Greyhound Foundation Fund, so there is no cost to the district to implement that pilot.
Board comments, Mr. Noggle.
I've commented it out.
You want to make your motion? Yeah, you
Was
do.
I supposed to make a motion tonight for a budget and finance committee?
You were.
You are.
I'd like to make a motion to get a budget and finance committee. I'm not sure if that's the right way to make the motion now.
So, yeah, okay. We'll work out the verbiage or your details. So,
Okay.
Mr. Noggle has a motion to create a budget and finance committee. Is there a second?
Red Scott seconds.
We already have a budget and finance committee.
Right.
You want a smaller
You want to call it a finance committee?
subcommittee of the budget and finance committee of a whole.
I'll be part of that.
Mr. Nago,
Haven't decided.
would it maybe be, you talked a little bit, would it be better to kind of flesh this out a little bit more in terms of the name and duties, and
To be
then
honest with you, we don't have a lot of time on a lot of stuff, do we?
We do now. We just passed all that stuff tonight, so
I guess it isn't quite as
really no.
I just think it would be maybe helpful if it was clear what the purpose was, and but obviously, you can make a motion if you'd like.
Talk about it a little. Or?
I mean,
How I would like to know how it's different than the budget and finance committee of a whole.
Who has that?
so let's just.
Everybody.
That's all of us.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's so convoluted. I don't know what the heck we're talking about.
So I guess you have made a motion, Mr. Noggle, right?
I did make.
Seconded by Mr.
By me,
Scott. Okay.
Second by Mr. Scott.
So I just, if just to,
We'll work out the verbiage.
yeah. So if I could ask if those who've made the motion could amend the motion to figure out verbiage to make it clear that it's not the Budget Finance Committee, that it has some other name and
How's ad hoc?
clarity of purpose. Is
Ad
it-
hoc of the Budget Finance Committee.
Just let it go till next meeting. We'll figure
So
it out.
you're rescinding your
I'm
motion?
gonna rescind my motion for 2 weeks.
We wore you out.
I'm done.
Dr. Lyman.
Just time to go home and go to bed.
Mr. Scott.
Yes, it's been talked about and done. Can we flip the meeting of the whole and the regular meeting, make the a regular meeting 7 o'clock and a meeting whole at 8? People are complaining about being up at 10 o'clock at night listening to us about the budget, whatever heck we're doing now. Committee. Why can't we flip them? Why can't the committee whole be at the end at 8 o'clock?
Well, I
It
mean,
typically is covering information that we will be voting on.
Not never. I ain't seen nothing we're voting on committee of whole. I'm just saying the people in the community are concerned because this late at night they turn off the budget. They don't even know what we're talking about. If we go from 7 to 9 with this part, then they got the option of seeing the meeting of whole. There's a lot of stuff on the meeting of whole doesn't compare. They don't really care about. But this part they do. I would just like to see this first and then meeting of whole. second. Am I wrong?
I would agree with you, except that we got a lot of guest speakers come in and make presentations, and they'd have no idea how long or when they got to commit. Well, like the ones that were here this evening to give the presentations in the first committee.
Or a lot of times
How long are they going to sit here and wait to do that?
that's when students come in a lot of times and give presentations after like a few.
Yeah, but also we got people in the taxpayers that we tell them to look at this, and 9 o'clock, they're going on and watching something on a soap opera or something else because they got disinterested.
Well, it is recorded, and they can watch it later. They can watch it on 2 times speed, which is what I do. And
This is just
meeting.
I know people approach me. I brought it up, and I've done my part.
Mr. Carey,
No thanks.
Dr. Goetz.
I just want to say, I mean, it's hard when we pass these, we make these, I don't know, pass these motions to do these construction projects. Every time it's been a struggle, but I have not yet regretted one of the things that we've done. I mean, I think we've made some really, good choices and built some cool stuff, and I don't regret anything yet. I'm optimistic, and going forward, I'm just excited about these projects. I'm having a hard time putting a coherent thought together at this hour, apparently. Thank you.
Mr. Donovan.
Yeah, I got to be a volunteer at the Shippensburg field trip. I think it was last week. I forget what day it was now. But went to an apple orchard over in Adams County. And I just wanted to give a shout out to all the kindergarten teachers and staff that went along for that trip. We represented Shippensburg very well, I thought. The kids were very well spoken and well behaved, and were able to answer a lot of questions during the field trip. So I was pretty impressed with how we did as a community. So just wanted to give a shout out.
I just want to thank the community for their patience tonight. Tonight's board meeting was a tough one, but it was definitely a true example of democracy in action. Even though we don't always agree, the discussions, the diverse perspectives and collaborative decision making are definitely what make this process work, and it's worth it, and onward and upward. Information date savers. We have October 16th, the Athletics Committee meeting, October 24th, facilities. November 8th is an Act 80 day, and there is no school for students, and November 11th is Veterans Day, so there's no school for teachers and students.